Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this live stream today. We're going to be covering a very important topic, which is the account of a survivor from the Chinese Communist Party's concentration camps in Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. I'm very grateful to you, Arsalan Hadayat, for setting up this interview, and also to Sister Zumrat for actually coming live as a survivor. And I know it's very difficult to her, so I'd like to thank both of you for joining us.
Walaikum assalam. Hazır şu aldıda bir bütün ilqi görünmenlerge salam berip muşu sizni şu Xitayning lagerda yetip çıkan bir mehmanimiz ketildi. Bu yerda şu özünün yaşaganlaryny bizge çöndürmekçi dep. Muşunu hazır görünmenlerge gap qildim şu gepini.
Vaalaykum assalam, rahmat. Vatanimizdagi bo'layotgan zulmlar bek ko'p, hamda buni birdan bir ko'rgichi ham beshimdan o'tkazgichi bo'lish salohiyatim bilan men aldishga hozir bo'lib o'tiribman.
She's saying that there is a lot of oppression going on in our homeland, and she is sitting in front of us, as you mentioned, as a survivor, and she's going to do her best to explain what is going on and what is going on in these camps. These people like Zumrat, Miss Zumrat, are very rare. Even though we have many that have left the camps and gone overseas, but the ones actually speaking up are very rare. So this is a great opportunity for everyone to listen today. And you can actually look at, if you just Google her name, she has given many testimony on the international stage, and we are very lucky to have her today.
Alhamdulillah. So if you can ask her, what was it that she did? What crime did she do? And what crime did these Uyghur Muslims do that they're being put in these horrendous conditions?
Birinci, and just probably a note for you, probably ask a question that's like what she's personally seen as well. Yeah. Deydi, siz nimish qildingiz? Siz nima günah o'tkazib shu lagerga kirib qoldingiz? Yoki bo'lmasa Xitoy sizni nima günah o'tkazdi deb aybladi sizni?
Bizga hech qanday lagerga kirib ketganlarning hech qanday gunohimizni o'zimizga deb bermaydi. Bizning hammadan cho'ng qilgan gunohimiz Uyg'urlarning biri chet elga chiqqan yoki chet elda tuqquni bor, chet el bilan aloqalashgan yoki telefonga diniy uslubdagi masalan Allah yoki bo'lmasa Turkiyaning belgisi degandek yoki ashundaq endi telefonlarga shu qalaymagan emas endi shu chet elning applari masalan WhatsApp, Facebook mushunda applarni tushirgan ish qilib bularning bizga jinoyat atmoqchi bo'lgan endi har qanday qalpig'i shu mushundaq ishlar shu masalan telefonga app tushading yoki sen chet elda aloqalashding yoki chet elda telefon urding.
She's saying that anyone that goes into these camps, they're actually not told or they do not know what crime they've ever committed. But generally speaking, the reasons are you have relatives overseas, you've called overseas, and we've spoken about this before, called overseas, we've got connections with overseas, we've got social media apps like WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram on our phones. These are some excuses that people are put into these camps, simply having connections with the outside world, whether it be social media or telephone calling or sending money and things like this, but an official court notice or what's the word, a search warrant or anything like this is not officially given.
Okay, excellent. Now, of her, obviously she was taken in. I just want to ask, like, she was at home, and we're told by this Chinese criminal regime that it's a vocational center, it's voluntary. So did someone come to her house and ask for her permission? How did she end up in there?
Siz dastlabda mushu lagerga qanday kirib qoldingiz? Uyingizdan oldimi? Xitoy davlatiri bir bo'yliqi xohlagancha bordigan yer davlatidi. Sizni chiroyliqcha so'rab aketdimi yoki qandaq bir shaklda sizni aketdi?
Bularning o'zi xohlab kelyotidi deyishidagi maqsad endi bir nima meni yoki boshqalarni to'limizni ham demasdan 100 adam lagerga kirgan bo'lsa, buning 90'ı ya 80'ni o'zlari soqchixonaga chaqirdi qarang. Tez gel, hazır gel, mühim iş var, sen bu soqchixonaga hozirning o'zida kel degandan biz kiyim uchimizda kiyim bormi, yo'qmi, putimizda oyoq bormi, 5 minut kelib bo'l yo 10 minut kelib bo'l deydi. Shu barimiz andiki uyga qaytib ketamaymiz. Ularning degini shu o'zi xalab keldi degini bizni meni endi masalan meni uyamga kelib ya qulamni qarib ya muz qo'yib ep ketmedi. Meni kel dedi soqchixonaga bordim, kelamadim uyamga ketamedim shu. Putamda sapmik eshilan kelganman soqchixonaga.
Anaki uyadan lagerga ketdi ular.
U yerda 20 necha soat soqchixonada turdim. Bütün so'ralgan savollarning hammasi mening şirketim bor, mana shu Urumchida ochilgan buni yo'ldoshim ishimiz tang ochgan va import eksport shirkati. Shuning bilan bu shirkatningki bütün aloqa sen shirkat ichib kelsa shirkatingda masalan aloqa chet eldan kirgan u masalan shirkatim bo'lgandan telefonlarni kirdi menga chet eldan. Men ba'zida yo'ldoshim ba'zida borib qoldi, yo'qib qoldi. Chet eldagi xaridorlarimizga telefon qilib qolamiz yoki bo'lmasa men urib qolaman, yo'ldoshim bir yoki ketib qolsa o'tma telefon qildi. Menga mushundaq bir qog'ozlarni ko'tarib kirdi. Qog'ozlar chetda qarasam, butunlay meningki telefon urgan xotiram bor ekan. Uni bir necha soat menga telefonda kim urdi, kimga kirdi telefon, men nomerlarni deb berdi. Men u yodqa bilmayman, hozir kim telefon nomeridagi telefonlarni yodqa bilalaydi. Hammamiz kirgizib o'timiz ism bilan. Men bilmayman buni dedim. Men kim vurdum ben bilmeyman. Ondan sonra sen yana 2 saatdan keyin yana yo'qolib ketdi u soqchilar. 2 soatdek meni o'ylamani deb tashlab qo'yib, anadagi yana bir qog'ozni ko'tarib kiribdi. U qog'ozni butunlay bankka urgan kirgan, bankining qog'oziga, bankadan chiqargan qog'oz. Sen mushlarga pul uribsa, bu ma odam senga pul uribdi. Ma odam desam pul urib beribsa degandek.
Okay, she's saying that the way that they get these Uyghurs is that she said she wasn't taken from home. She's saying 80 to 90% of the Uyghurs are called by the police station and the message is, you have to come quickly. You have to come right away. This is the message from the police. And therefore, as a Uyghur, getting called by the police is a scary event in itself. But for them to go, you have to come right away, there's something wrong, you're like up and running and whether you've got your clothes on right or wrong, or you've got your shoes, you just go right out the door. So this is what she did. As soon as she got to the police station, she was interrogated for 20 hours. Now her and her husband run sizning yo'ldoshingiz Pakistanlik. Her husband is Pakistani, and so they run an import and export business within the capital Urumqi. And so she gets calls from overseas because she's running an international business to an extent. She was interrogated for 20 hours. And from there, I was so'roq tatib bo'lgandan keyin lagerga apadi qanday ish bo'ldi?
Voy, oldi boshlab doktorxonaga olib bordik ekan. 24 soatdan ortiq vaqt meni shu urgan kirgan nomerlarni deb yo bo'lmasa bank kartasini deb sen chet elga chiqibsa dedi taxminan. Sen chet elga chiqibsa dedim, men chiqqan vaqtimda bütün shu Xitoyning o'zining qurgan sayohat idoralari bilan chiqdim. Bor degan vaqtida bordik, kel degan vaqtida keldik. Hattoki yig'in ochdi o sayohat idoralaridan olib borgandim. 3 kun uda yig'in ichib, ashar Uyg'urlar bilan gaplashmaysan yoki u urug' tuquning bo'lsa shaxsiy harakat qilmaysan degandek alaqi nimalar bilan chiqimizdan o shartlarni hozirlagan asosda chiqimiz biz chet elga chiqsaqmi, biz chiqqan bilanmi men hech kimni tunmadim, hech qanday bo'lmadi. Lekin bag'a yalarim jiq. Hatto sayohat idorasining isbotnimi kelgan sayohat idorasining isboti bu shu chet elga chiqqanlarga sayohat idorasi isbot bo'lmaydi deb mana sayohat idorasining isboti Jungo yoshlar sayohat idorasidan mushnimi biz ap qo'ygan burun sayohatga chiqqanlarning hammasini tutib ketib shu sayohat bilan chiqqanlarni boshqa qilgandan keyin men oldin ola shu narsalarni mana tarjimasi shu narsalarning hammani men tayyor qilib qo'ygan. Men dedim uyga telefon qilinglar, men chetga chiqqanim bilan men sayohat idorasidan chiqdim, qonunliq chiqdim, yo'l bilan chiqdim. Sizlar agar nima qilmasanglar yo'ldoshimga telefon qilinglar, yo'ldoshim isbotlab bersin dedim. Desam uningmi anglamadi. Lekin senda Amerikaning vizasi bor ekan dedim. Men 96-yil, to'g'ri men 96-yili 2016-yili men 2016-yili men bolalarim bilan Guangzhoudan shu 3 balam men yo'ldoshim burun olgan Amerikaning vizasini men 2016-yil olgan. Eplam uzoq o'tmay bizning pasportlarni yig'ib oldi. Şu sen Amerika'nın vizesi var ki pasportunda dedi. Amerika'nın vizesi olsa ben oynagıla çıkıp yoluşumda çıktım güzel dedi, çıraylık dedi. Ben berip kelay dedim ballarım bilen. Mening hech qanday nimam yo'q desam, sen Rabia Qadirilla qanday alaqangiz bormi? Tunisham Rabia Qadiril dedim. Men kichik vaqtlarimda Rabia Qadir apash bu Amerikaga chiqib ketgan. Men tunimayman o chaqda unchalik pek.
Tamam, ben mush gapingizni tushuntirib tarjima qilay. So after she was interrogated for 20 hours, and within the interrogation, she had been overseas, because she's a Pakistani husband, that she had an American visa in her passport, and every time she did go overseas, it was with a tourism group, and people have to understand that. Even in China, right, or in East Turkestan, the Uyghurs are not necessarily given a normal passport. There are various different types of passports, like a tourism passport, only for tourism. So even when these tourists, Uyghur tourists, do go overseas, especially in a group, they don't get to hold on to their own passports. Their passports are held on to by the tour guides. And they were basically asking her, why did you go overseas? Why did you go to the United States? Why have you got an American visa? But all of these things were lawful. It wasn't an illegal passport. The passport was given by Chinese authorities. The visas were given by the American consulate or whatever consulate, wherever country she had gone to. So even these were asked. After she was interrogated, she was taken to the hospital. And maybe you want to, should I just ask and then translate what I'm asking, or do you want to?
I think that's the best, because what I get is her sort of journey into it, and especially you ask her that, okay, now she's basically gonna be part of this concentration camp for I don't know how long. How did she deal with the fact of one day dealing with her family, her husband, the outside world, the homeland that she loves, and the other day mentally being stuck in a place, not knowing what crime you've committed and not knowing how long you're going to be there? How did she mentally deal with that in the first couple of days?
Should we go into, say, from the hospital, should we go into how she actually got in? Because I think that would be interesting as well.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay, shunchik so'roqlarni qildi. Doktorxona apiribdi. Doktorxonada nima ish qildi? So I've just asked her, guys, man tarjim qilay. So I've just asked her, now she's gone from the interrogation room in the police station to the hospital. I've just asked her what happened at the hospital.
Yeah.
Hozir deganim shu doktorxonada nima ish qildi hozir sizga? Lagerdan kirishdi.
Shuni bilan at degan qaqsada men qani 3-ayning 31-kuni sen meni 2018 3-ayning 31-kuni men at deganda nima shu 31-slar qildim 4-ayninki 1 bo'lib ketdi-da, hamda 24 soatdan ortiq vaqt turib ketdi. Atisiga at degan soat shu bek at deganda bizning uydagilar kelsa meni ko'rishtirmadi, suvmi bermadi, net hamda shu 20 soat ichida hech qanday og'zimga suv yoki hech qanday narsa bermadi. Ashundaq so'rab qolgandan keyin meni soqchixonning o'zida mushtaq qarasam tala ustiga chiqdi. Meni yer ostida so'rab qolgan. Shuni bilan ustida qarasam talaga bir mashina keldi, soqchi mashinasi. Aynakdan ko'rib turdim-da men uni. O'ng'ichilik qarasam shu bishimga xaltini kiygizib nega gapirganimni bilmisin deb o'ylamdi ekan. Endi mashinaga xaltini kiygizgan paytda qo'limni keynimga qarab ko'zini seplab mashinaga chiqdi deb 1 soatdek mantiq ekan. 1 soat mangan ekan shu bir doktorxonaga amaliyotdi. Lekin u yerdagilarning hammasi ichida soqchi kiyim, ko'pida xalat kiyib olganlar. U adam degan jiq, endi bu ayollarning jiqligidan bizning har yerdan apaga Uyg'ur ayollarning jiqligi bir miqda yo'q. Hammamizni qatirsiga tizib, har bir uyning oldida betiq apparat, qon ilish, sudik ilish, chiroy tunutish degandek ashundaq har bir uyning ustida ham o'zining kuchli xati bor ekan. Mashina uzun qatorda hammamizning soqchisi yinimizda bor. Birlab shu soqchiliqi har bir o'tkaldan o'tdik. Ko'zning nurini deb tatvatdi rasmga, ko'zning nurini mashundaq bir apparat bor ekan, shuni chigib ko'zimizga tutdik. Qon oldi, qonni bilakdan oldi, shunda jiq oldi qonnimi. Ondan keyin ovozni bir xansuch xat o'qiy olamsan dedi. Men dedim xansuch xat o'qiy olmayman. Desam, o'sha yerda bir partiya bejma qurulti degandek bir kitob bor ekan. Uni dedi bir varaqni o'qiyver dedi. Ma'qul deb o'qiyapman, yayliq apparat manda chiqar ekan degan bizning ovozimizni tunib bo'lgandan keyin, haqiqiy munda bilib bo'lgandan keyin bu ovoz munda bo'lib chiqqanda andan keyin to'xtaydi ekanmiz. Yiliqi kayfiyat bormi endi? Ya yiliqi ovozimiz titrab ketdi, qo'rqinchlikda ya yig'lab solamiz. Yana o'qidaydi, yiliqini ish qilib bir batni oz o'qigandim 20 qatim o'qigandim, 20-30 qatim.
Okay, men shuni tarjima.
Xo'sh.
So she's actually still got more to go, but I just wanted to translate this bit. So she was interrogated for 20 hours with no food or water. This was on the March 31st, 2018. The morning of the 1st of April 2018, she wasn't allowed to meet with her family or her husband, and she was taken in a black bag, like a black hoodie, with cuffs on her back, and they had driven her for about an hour. They reached the hospital, but the hospital, the people were officers. They had the office like a police officer uniform, and then they had like a gown, like what doctors would wear. And she says the whole room, there were so many women, and they were all Uyghurs. There was no Chinese or any other ethnic group there. They were just Uyghurs. And within that room, there were different sections. So the first bit was they had their iris scanned. Then their blood was taken. And then in the third room, their voice was scanned. So they had to read from a red book meaning a communist book. They first asked her, does she know Chinese? Can she read Chinese? And she said no. So they gave her an Uyghur book to read, and they made her read. And remember, this 1 or 2 pages, 20, 30 times. And think about it. You've been interrogated for 20 or so hours, no food, no water. You don't know what the hell is going on. You can't get in contact with your loved ones. After this 20-hour interrogation, you haven't slept. Early in the morning, you get put into a black bag. Then you get taken to this place where there's hundreds of other women there. You don't know what you're being tested for. You're made to read from this book. You're scared, and from this one book, they had to read the same pages 20, 30 odd times. Now I'm going to ask her, then what happened? Anondan keyin mesela şu betlarni o'qidingiz. Anondan keyin nima ish bo'ldi?
Ondan keyin barmoq izi oldi. Mening mavu qulamdan bir azroq kesilib ketgan yer bor deb yana bir tikkanda doktorxonada. Shu bu o'tmaganda shunchalik endi testda yana barmoqni besib o'tkazib, shu butun hammani qilib bo'ldi. O'ng'ichilik shu degan bag'a adamning jihlig'i yiliq o'ylar deganni yetishmaydi bizga da. Endi birimiz kirimiz, birimiz manchilik vaqtdan uni o'qib, bu ovozimizni o'tkazish. Men manchilik 20 qatim, 30 qatim o'qidim. Mening kaynimdagilarga mashta vaqt ketdi-da, endi ularning ovozini edish uchun. Shu bir qorong'uda andan keyin u yerdagi ishlar tugadi. Tuggandan keyin yana bizni soqchixonadan olib kelgan bizniki soqchixonniki menga mas'ul soqchisi yana bizni shu yana qora xaltani kiydiriblam yana mashinaga besib apmang kechida meni shu turmagan shu lagerdamda qamdi o'g'inish maydoni deydi-ku, o'g'inish dedi bizni ham chetaldagi lager deydi, biz u yer o'g'inish deymiz. Shu o'g'inish maydoniga operatimiz Sho'shibanga deb ashla degan ovozlarni oldim. Shu Sho'shiban deydi, lekin amaliyotda Sho'shiban deb Sho'shiban emas, u turmaning o'zi, u turma.
Okay, so after she had read all those pages, they went to do her fingerprints. She's got a scar on her. Apparently, she showed me her index finger, and that took a while to scan. After that, and it took ages because they processed these women for hours on end. After that 20-hour interrogation, after they were processed, she was taken back into a black bag, handcuffed, back to the original police station. From there, he was taken to what we call the concentration camps, but they named it education or vocational school. That's what the police would call it themselves. Should I ask her then what happened? Or
yeah. If you just carry on.
I'll just carry on. Anandan keyin sizni lagerga apadi.
To'g'ri, u kirgan kunisi u meni bugun kech uxlab ertadan boshlab jibar tursa dedi. Shu men ichiga kirsam, u ichida bir 28 odam bak endi
Sizning nimaning hujraning ichida 28 adam bor.
28 adam bor, yerim o'rtiribdi, yerimi uxlatibdi, ben anlashib turibdi. Shunala atdiganda shu qop bir qiyachiyalar bo'lib ketdi shu bu yer men necha uxlamadim endi. Men asha ichiga kirib bir insondan gapni so'ramadim. Qo'rqib titrab turib, yig'lab turib yetib uxlab qoldim. Men atdiganda qarsam, yeniqi hozirgi mushu koronavirus taqalgan vaqtida hozirqilar qanday kiydi masalan, ustidan astig'ichilik, oq kiyim, ko'zoynak, ondan keyin keyindimda do'r chechadigan narsa bor ekan. Bu ichidagi ayollarning hammasining mushallari yerilib, qichqaqning dastidan badallari. Aşında bu bitki aş kiyimning ustidan nasos bilan eliqi hamma odamga to'rchashda kiyimning to'pidan eliqlar joyida turib taqlab chiqirib ashunda bo'lib ketdi qarang. Ashu u eliqi qichqaqning to'g'risimiki yoki nimning to'g'risiki u eshaklar ashunda kiyimning to'pidan chashdi eliqi to'g'rini u birinchi bo'lib eliqi ko'zam bali ko'rgan hamda bizga bak qilingan birinchi qatibga tutilib atsigili bo'lgan ish bu. Aşında ayollarning hammasini badallariga aşında dorilarni chechib, aşında dezinfeksiya dedi, lekin u bek badanga tekkandikin bek ichib turib, bek jonni og'ritadigan narsa o'xshaydi. Ichidagi hammasi baqinib ketdi.
Siz his qildingizmi u charchagan, sizga chechildimi o narsa?
Yo'q, men yangi kirdim, menga chashmadi uni. Ichidagi ayollarga hamda shu kunda chachamdi desam, yo'q 15 kunda bir qatim çaçıda bu nerturunsiz yaqin kelmang buni qarab ichidagi ayol meni bir achash ashadi. Siz kelmangsiz yaqin kelsiz yo'q bu ish. Nerturun bu bek jonni og'ritadigan narsa ekan deb. Bunda nasosdak daraxtlar dor chachitib qo'y burunda. Qurt o'tiradigan degandek dorilarni ashta dora endi lekin hamma odamning badani qichqaq. Bek yara, qon hattoki mushu orliqning orliq mushu badan hamma qon bo'lib ketibdi ba'zilarning. Ash dorini ashu o'lib qolmaysa, lekin bu qutuldirdi degandekchi hamda bir og'irtib, jonni og'irtib shunda qutuldiradigan bir xil dora degandeklar shu hech kimning og'riqi bilan kar yo'q. Ash dorini hammasiga ash birinchi bo'lib ko'rgan ishim shu. Qolganini deb birman.
Ularning u dara hamda shu qichqan ash nimaga ashlarning darisiga hisoblashadi.
Ashlarning degani ham dezinfeksiya suyuqligidek o'xshaydi, lekin bak jonni og'ritadigan.
So the first thing now again, remember she hasn't had any rest, so she wakes up in this camp now. The first thing, the first experience that she has is she wakes up, like imagine like Fajr time, she wakes up to screams. What's happening is she was put into a cell of 28 women. Herhalde bu yerda yerimi yetib yerimi qopmasa adam sig'maydi, shundaqmi?
To'g'ri.
Okay. So she was put into a room with 28 women. The size of the room, you have to imagine this. Only half of the women can sleep, and the other half can have to stay upright, be standing. Otherwise, there's not enough room. So you can kind of guess how big the room is. 28 women in one room. She wakes up to women screaming, and what they were screaming is because those women are there. She saw, you know how we're seeing with the coronavirus, the doctors in PPEs.
Yeah.
So you had, say, the prison guards in PPEs. They were spraying the women, and this was a sort of medication because the women had what do you call it, like rashes and cuts, and because they're in such filthy area, this was like a sort of medicine, just like how you would use pesticides on crops. They were being sprayed down with this thing, and this would hurt the women. It'll be like, imagine, you know how you have a cut, you rub some alcohol and it kind of stings. So this was the official's way of taking care of so that like disease doesn't spread. But apparently it really hurt. But for her, she wasn't sprayed down that first day because she only had just arrived. She hadn't got to a stage where she had built up these rashes or anything that you would get, after, not having showers and things like this. I'll just continue on with my questioning. Okay, u birinchi qitim ashta sizda ilk birinchi qitim bir ashta bir ta'sirat shuni ko'ribsiz. Andan keyin siz boshqa nimalarga uchardingiz. So I've just asked her that what other so that was her first experience. What other experiences that she would like to share with us? Başka nimelerni ko'rdingiz?
Men kirgandan keyin, mendan keyinmi yana shu kunisi men kirgan kunisidan keyin, shu mendan keyin yana 5 odamlar kirdi. Uni ichi azalda bek kichik. Shu 20 necha odammi ashunchalik qistilib, yo yotgan yo'q qarang. Hech qanday narsa yo'q. Daqlam yerda endi. Hech qanday bir yepindigan narsa yo'q. Ashundaq shunchalik so'g'aq. U bir nesimi hattoki siz masalan o birni qilgan bo'lsangiz, masalan, biz qilganlarimiz ko'rinib turdi qayerda, hatto bir ozroqmi to'saqmi yo'q. Shunchalik tez yuzimizni yuvamiz, shunchalik tez taqib turishimiz kerak. Ondan keyin shu suvmi bek normal su. Tamoqlarimiz shunchalik nachar. Yilidan yili birlarini achib ketdi, yilidan yili birlari qo'shilib qoldi. Kimni achib ketdi, nega ketdi, nima ish qilib ketdi, nima sababdan ketdi, uni bilmaymiz. Ashunda.
So not long after she was in, I mean, the room was cramped in itself. Another 4 or 5 people had come in. People are taken out of the cells randomly. What happens to these people is unsure. The food is of a very poor quality. So basically, they're not being taken care of. They're not being malnourished in the cells. Anlayışımızca tamaklamı az verdi. Bu vaqtda hem nachar hem de az.
Bir ishni unutib qolibdiman. Ma bu turmaga akirishdan burun, mashu lagerga akirib, xozning ichiga akirishdan burun bizga bir kiyimlarni berdi, ko'rang. Kiyim almashtir dedi. Meni akaga saqchi, meni ashlarga topshiribdi. Uni ichida bir ayol, 2 er kishi bor. Men dedim, endi ma kiyim, xotin kishi kiyim almashtirgandan keyin bir er kishi qarab turmaslik kerak, endi har qancha bo'lsin. Men dedim, sizlar chiqib turamdi ya deb, men er kishilar borga kiyimni almashtir dedi meni. Men dedim, men er kishi borga men kiyimni almashtira olmayman. Desam lam qo'ldagi shu tayoq bilan meni birinchi qatam yegan tayoqim shu. O'sha er kishi bormi yo'qmi, sening nima chatqin almashtirsam ishada deblam meni shu xanzu saqchi. Ayol kishi endi texim tayoqni yesa almashtiramiz dedi. Er kishi bayadi kiyim almashtirdim men. Birinchi qatam endi kirmay turib er kishi bayada men kiyim almashtirdim.
So she forgot to mention one thing. Just before she went into the cell, obviously they're given a uniform to wear, just like we see in like how prisoners wear. Subhanallah. She was taken into a room with 3 prison guards, 2 male and 1 female, and they said to change your clothes. And obviously there are 2 males there with her. So there's 4 people in the room, 1 her, 1 female, and 2 male officers. And she's like, well, can these guys leave? Yani, I can't change my clothes. And then they shouted at her, change your clothes. Like they didn't care. They didn't, take into consideration what she was saying. And she begged them, like, I can't change my clothes. Just change your clothes or you get beaten. And that was the first time before even she went into the cell that she was beaten because she wouldn't change her clothes in front of the guards. And eventually, so eventually, to save a beating, she did not get beaten. She eventually had to change her clothes in front of those male prison guards. Siz devam qiling. I thought I've just told her to continue. Just, yeah.
Kunda atdiganda yuzimizni yuvib bo'lgandan keyin ashtaq shunchalik nachar hamdi. Bu tamoqlarim bir shunchalik qattiq umum bek kichik. Mo'ma ondan keyin saytan deb qo'ydi bu biz odatda tamoqni tayyorlashdan burun uchinlarni uyabiyalarni olib tashlaymiz masalan. Ashundaq bir sayning adolat etgan aqltaga suv qo'yib qaynitib akapagandaklar. Un ish nacharligida gap to'g'ri kelmaydi u tamoqniki. Shunchalik nachar. Ashta tamoqni berdi. Ondan keyin bizni shu bir koridorning har birimizni ashundaq bog'langan holatda har birimizni tizildirib, shu uzunligi bir 7 metr, kengligi bir 6-7 metrlik bir zal bor, uzun zal. Uni ichida bir muallim hamda o'rganish muallimmi bir qapazning ichidagi bir yer bor. Muallimni mana qapazning ichiga solib qo'ydi. Biz shunchalik endi ruh, jon, hech qanday narsa yo'q bizning ularga bir ziyon zahmat yetkazdiganga. U muallimni qapazning ichida o'tda g'uzib qo'yib turib bizga shu xitoycha dars berdi shu. Hammamiz butun hammamiz moshunda qo'limiz yerda, qo'limizni qo'ysa, moshunda pastda yerda, so'g'oq yerda shu mushtala qo'limizni chaplab o'tirib muallimning darsini anglaymiz.
Simont yerda ya'ni. O ana hisobda siz bir ularga nisbatan bir sinf kirdingiz 6-7 metrlab.
To'g'ri.
O'tirib qapazga ma'lum berdi. O sinfga qancha kishi o'tirdi?
Az bo'lganda 40-50 odam, necha uyning odamini bir uy qilib shunday dars o'tadi.
So when they wake up in the morning, they are given a bun, a small bun, together with boiled this boiled vegetable soup type food, but it's very low quality. So you can imagine probably like 100 or 200 calories, perhaps 250 calories. After that, they are taken to a classroom. This classroom is a very small classroom. They put it's basically an empty room, and they sit right onto the cement. So it's not like how they show the vocational schools where they're sitting on chairs and tables. No, they're sitting on like cement, and the teacher is caged also for the teacher's protection. So the teacher is caged because they think like these prisoners are going to attack the teacher. And she sizlarga nima o'qitdi?
Men Xitoychada bak o'rganib ketmadim. O darslarimiz Xitoycha, endi o ba'zan bir oddiy gaplarni tushunib ketalayman. Shu o'rgatgan vaqtida bu islom dini bizniki o'zimizniki sirtdan kirib qolgan bir masalan bir zaharlik yuqumlan masalan zaharlik chekimlikni biz chekib yuqum alqi xumor bo'lib qolgandek, shunda biz sirtdan kirgan bizga bo'lgan bir intayin zaharlik bir ashundaq asosda bu islom dini Uyg'urlarning emas. Bu sizlar shunda zaharlandinglar. Chet eldagi mana alqi kirgan din bu.
Okay. Yeah, so some of the lessons that the first lesson that they would be taught is Islam 101 for them, meaning that they get taught that Islam is an outside religion. This has nothing to do with the Uyghurs, that this is like a drug that has been given to you and you guys have been drunk from it, and that there is actually no connection, that this is something foreign, and that the Uyghurs shouldn't be a part of it. It's foreign to you guys, so that this was being drilled into them. Islam to'g'riliq boshqa nimalarni o'rgatdi masalan? Abay shu to'g'riliq dedim men. Boshqa islom to'g'risida nim dedi, ya'ni.
Islom shu sirtdan eqib kirgan bir alaqi sizlarga bu haqiqiy bu Uyg'urlar islom diniga e'tiqod qilmaydigan millatdir. Bu sirtdan eqib kirgan bir din. Bu amaliyotda biz qabul qilishga bo'lmaydigan din degandek. Hattoki bizni har bir 2-3 qatam ashta qildi. Har bir qatam emas, har qanday gapni rostdan biz chiqadigan vaqtimizda hattoki bizga saqchilar ashta chiqadigan Alloh bormi? Shu endi birinchi qatam kirganda biz musulmon bo'lgandan keyin biz og'zimizdan chiqaramaymiz o gapni, na'uzubillah. To'g'ri, hech kim chiqaramaydi o gapni. Yo'q degan gapni biz demaymiz, lekin endi u tayoq zarbasi, u xo'rlanish, endi ashunda ahvol ostida hammamiz shu ashyadan sap, hatto o'rganish maydonidan chiqadigan vaqtida qo'lda kaltak, Alloh bormi? Shu hamma ayollar yo'q. Ana degan jim mangadi. Alloh bormi? Ishtib javob bermagandan keyin yana vasida tayoq kaltak bilan urdigan.
So again, with this whole Islam issue, again, basically it's a foreign thing. It doesn't belong to the Uyghurs. You guys should let this go. And after every lesson, I as a teacher, I reinforce and I find that if my students learn anything, so as they are leaving, they go, the guard asks, does Allah exist? Does God exist? And they have to straight away answer no. For the ones that kind of wait a few seconds to answer, they get beaten. like for not answering on time. Like, why are you hesitating? Hasn't the lesson sunk into your mind? So they are being forcefully indoctrinated verbally, and then eventually they are beaten if they see that there is a little resistance, like not answering on time or taking a few seconds to answer. Subhanallah.
Allah'ını görmedin, kaysın gördün Allah'ını? Allah'ını kaysınlar gördünler? Xi Jinping'ni kaysımız görüvatımız, közümüzle görüvatımız Xi Jinping'ni. Lekin Allah'ını kaysın gördün? Digine dep aşta sual koydu bizge.
So another question that she just said was from the guards or from the teachers. How many of you have actually seen Allah? How many of you have actually seen God? But look, how many of us can see Xi Jinping? So right here, they're saying we can see like Xi Jinping. They're telling them to worship Xi Jinping, like indirectly. None of you have seen God. Tell me, who's brave enough to say that? Have any of you seen God? And this is, the questions like, başka qandaq mustaqalita suallar so'rildi sizga? Qaysinglar ko'rdinglar deya haqiqatan bir g'alita Xi Jinpingni ko'rdik degandek masalan shunga doir boshqa.
Ashta deydi shu Xi Jinpingning har qanday qilayotgan ishlarini, bizga qilayotgan rahimini hammasini bilyapmiz. Allohni qaysin ko'rding? Deb bira, Allohni ko'rganing bormi? Birasan Allohni ko'rdingmi? Deb. Endi yana bir ish, men shu kirib aytsalar bo'lgan ish, men bilmayman, endi birsimizga mo'ma bersak, uncha jazolanadiganligimizni, birsimizga tomoq bersak jazolanadiganligini men bilmaydi ekanman. Men kirgan kunisi 60 necha yoshga kirgan bir apash bor ekan ashachida. Endi u apash shikar kasal deymiz, endi u apashga izchil turda insulin urilayotgan ayol ekan u. U apashninki endi kirgan vaqtda shaxsiy haj qilganligi uchun, shaxsiy haramga borganligi uchun, yana apash tutib turilyapti ekan. Shunchalik endi kirgan kunsi pichirlab man dedim işte. Men insulin urayotgan bu tamoqqa faqat to'ymadim, meni keslim bek qo'zg'alib ketibdi deb. Men bilmadim, u men jazolanganligimni bilmayman, men o'zimning yeydigan tamoqimni o apashga berdim.
Subhanallah.
Berganimni endi o ichida aparatlar bor o'xshaydi, birdamning ichida o kaltak to'qmoqlarni ko'tarib kirib ura. Men yana kirib uzoq o'tmagan bo'lgandan keyin men og'zimdan Alloh degan gap chiqib ketdi. Ya Alloh deb chaqira Allohni deb u texmi meniki tariximga endi bek dinayetlik kuchlik mushunlar texmi zaharlangan degandek endi bekroq ig'irroq yozib qo'yibdi. Shuning bilan Allohni chaqira. Seni Allohning mening oldimda qutqazsin. Hali Xitoyning o'g'an saqchining urg'ani ozdig'i besib bilib dastlab kaltakladi. Endi chaqira Allohni chaqira. Seni qutqazsin, mening oldimda qutqazsin, sening vida endi ulug' Allohning meni qo'limda qutqiza olsin.
Subhanallah.
Deb ashta endi beklamadim, 3 kun o'rnimda qo'pamadim.
So she just mentioned the story that you had shared yesterday. There was a 60-year-old woman in her cell, and that woman had approached or was sitting next to Miss Umrat here, and the woman has diabetes. And she wasn't getting her insulin, and the food that they were providing her, she obviously wasn't being filled from it, and she had no idea that giving your own food to another prisoner would be sinful or a crime, and so she felt bad. She's an elder. I'm going to help her out. Gave her the food because this woman's going to die from not getting her insulin shot, so might as well. And as soon as she gave that food, guards, she's saying there must be cameras in there because they couldn't see the cameras. She was beaten by guards for giving the food very hard. And during the beating, she cried, Ya Allah, like it was, spur of the moment, like a natural inclination. And from that, they realized that, the disease of Islam is deep inside her because, there's something inside we would just call out. And so she was put like basically on an unofficial list that we need to really take care of her. And right then and there, as she was being beaten, call out to Allah, call out to your God, have him come and save you from my hand. So
işte bir mesela bizim şu tavallikte bir mit juydigan mesela biz ayollarning büyü deb qo'ymiz, endi ayollar o'lib ketsa sujuydigan, masalan bir yilay berib xatmi Qur'on qildigan, o'lib ketganlar bir odam tugib ketsin, uyga ayollar tugib ketsa ayollar o'zaro xatmi Qur'on qildigan bir ojish ekan. aş ağaçını tutu aş ağaçımı battı yaşadı.
Ha, men gapingizni bilib etdim. Abi bir nimani unutib qaptim ha. Shuni davolay. She's saying the woman that she had given the food, her crime was she went to Hajj privately, because normally in China or throughout China, hatta, regardless of whether you're Uyghur or not, you're actually not allowed to go on a private Hajj. You need to go with an official signed group, and that's why the 60-year-old woman was in the camp in the first place. Apple places ABP gapingizda boshdan asıl.
U ağacımızı hem de şu Hatmi Kur'an kıldıgan, ayallar tügepke sujudigan, aşında bir ağacımız hem o ağaçını jıraqtan tanıyman. Şu ağaçını şu burun uzun kiyim kiyetdi de mesela ayallar laqi abayi degende kiyimlerini kiyip jürüdigan jüretti burundan tantip bizemdi. Qale yaşlı çoğun ağaç. Aş qıp yalang'aç anısından to'g'mi qilib qo'yib bela qachashni. Aş holatda amdi kiya uzun kiyimni. Amdi mushu uzun kiyimni kiya musulmon bo'lganga to'ysa amdi uzun kiyimni. Amdi kiymamsa deb aş yalang'achlab esib qo'yib ashunda urib butun bizning ashu xo'zning ichiga tashlab qo'yadi xotin. 4 kun o'rinda qo'pam deylik ayol. Badallar degan urib deydi.
There was o qancha yoshlarda bilamsiz u ayol?
Bir 53-54 yoshlarda bor.
Okay. There was a 53. What she personally saw a torture, a beating of a 53-year-old woman. She would, you may have this in Pakistani culture as well. When somebody dies, or there's a new home, men or women get together and they read Quran. And she was a woman of this nature, and she would wear long clothes. She would wear abaya. And so she was taken into the camps for this reason, basically living her Islam. And they actually hung her by the wrists. So they hung her naked by the wrists and beat her, saying, "Now let's see you wear your long clothes." They beat her, and then they threw her into the cell where sizning turatgan hujraga atdi, shunaqmi? So they threw that 53-year-old woman that used to pray Quran and wear long clothes, and she was beaten by the wrists. She was hanging off the wrists, and they threw her into Miss Lumrat's cell, and she qancha kun qopalmidi?
4 kun.
So around 4 days, that woman actually couldn't get up because that's how badly she was beaten. Davam qiling.
Bir kichik qiz olatdi.
She died?
Arab tili.
U 4 kundan keyin qopib normal hayotga qaytib keldimi? Qana bo'ldi? Bilamsiz, shu 53 yoshli ayolning.
Normal hayot keldi ya.
So after she recovered, and it was back to however the rest of them were being taken care of. And davam qiling.
Arab tili o'rgangan bir qiz bola ekan, hamda u qiz bola arabchini kursda o'rgangan qiz ekan, arab tilini. Keyin ancha-muncha hamda bir do'stiningki bolasiga arab tili o'rgatib, hamda Qur'on savodan chiqargan o'xshaydi. U qiz bolani mashinada achib ketib, u qiz bolani pichirlab turib tepadi ma. Shu ustiga siyib saqchilar. Sizlar musulmonlar namoz o'qiganda avval juzlarga, bunda juzlarga, endi juya. Endi mushunda taratlar.
Subhanallah. Abi kurs deganimiz endi shu hukumat tashkillanganligi, ya'ni tegida o'rganmaganligi, otlandakiligi, cho'ng bir
u deydi, men ashundaq bir kurs o'rgangan, lekin endi do'stimning bolasiga ham arab o'rgatib qo'y, Qur'onni o'rgatib qo'y deganligi uchun men o'rgatgan. Maktablarga berib so'raydi-chi, bular maktablarga berib, bu kichik bolalar nimani biladi, maktabga berib, "Oppang namoz o'tamdi, dadang namoz o'tamdi" degandan keyin bu bolalar sadda bolalar, esida yo'q. O'taydi yo jumaga boramdi deb so'ra. Nurg'un odamlar opasininki dadasini tutilib kishiga kichik bolalar ba'zi sabab cho'p qoldi. Bolalar yolg'on so'zlamaydi deb soldi hamma gapni. Maktabga berib so'rab, shu bolasi menga palonchi ma'lum darsga opamning do'sti deganligi uchun tutilib ketdi qizim.
So a lot of how these Uyghurs are actually caught are actually by their own children. Now, obviously, children are innocent, and they're going to see what their parents do or what their neighbors do. And when these kids, young kids, go to school, and the teachers ask them, "Do your parents pray? Do your parents fast?" Of course, they're going to go, "Yeah, my parents pray." Do your parents say "Assalamu alaikum"? Yeah, they say "Assalamu alaikum," innocently. And so there was this one girl. Necha yaşlarda o siz abaydigan şu Kur'an ügetken kız var mı?
26 yaş, 26 yaş kızı.
26-year-old girl. She learned Arabic, not underground, from an official language course. She learned her Arabic, and she was told by another family to teach their son Arabic so that he could read Quran. So this son eventually went to school. How did you learn Quran? And basically, well, I've got this teacher. That's how this girl got in. Siz bu gapni bu siz bu tarat ilish anladınız mı, ko'rdingiz mi?
O'zi deb berdi menga o'qizon
So that girl
deb kirgandan keyin menga mush gaplarni deb berdi ustimga
Okay.
ustimga
So this girl So this girl that had taught, that was in the camp for teaching Arabic to a boy, like a family friend's son, she personally told Miss Zumrat that when she came into the camp, that she was urinated on, and while she was being urinated on, they said, "Don't you Muslims do wudu? Don't you guys wash yourselves before you?" Subhanallah. Don't you guys do wudu, ablution before you pray? Do your ablution with this, bro. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Ya Allah, forgive me. Subhanallah, forgive me, Ya Allah. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Brothers and sisters, Sabura just gone offline for a second. Yani, like even just myself now, like we've got things so easy. Subhanallah, like wallahi, I haven't heard of these things being committed by the US government to people in Guantanamo or by Zionists. I have not heard of these things, like, and we've talked about this with Brother Subur before, like, like death is much better, at least you're put out of your misery, but this Communist Party, the ultimate, and like we said, I mean, this is a testimony, and this is a testimony. I mean, this is coming out of somebody's mouth, and then when we say, you know what, China, let's hear your side of the story, give us free access, they say no. If they're not giving people free access, then what on earth are they hiding? Subhanallah.
Qanchalik dinga siz bakroq namoz o'tagan yoki bo'lmasa shu shaxsiy haj qilgan yoki undaqlar bo'lsa, bular degan tirnoqlargachilik Xitoylarning kichik soqchilaridan cho'ng boshliqlargachilik nim bo'lib bo'pti-ku, yana cho'ng bingdomo deb qo'ydik, cho'ng mana cho'ng kasalmi deb ashta farqlandirdi. Cho'ng kasal degani shu bek din bilan mana bek 5 vaqt namoz
Yani dereceleri var şunak mı? Yani mesela ançı munça mesela şu abay degeni Kur'an okugan ya ki bomsa namazımı da kıvatkan ya bir sakal koyargan degendek.
Xo'sh, to'g'ri.
She says especially when it comes to Islam, it's levels. So depending on how much this person was involved in Islam, so someone that went to Hajj would be of a high level, or teaching Quran. But then you might have some say mild Muslims, or maybe a bit of a beard, or maybe not necessarily practicing. This sort of case. And the muşu din hakkında dediniz hem de biz küratimiz. Mesela din bile alakası bulmagan, hayatıda namaz bakmagan insanlar mı küratını küratimiz, gualık bir atın kendaşlarımız var. Ben bu sualını soraştım. Burun ben sualını sorap sizge, siz ançımıç oylap, anın tercim kılıma. Muşu hakkında mesela dinge ançın yımkama, muşta kendaşlarını köydünüz mü? Fakat özünün hayatında din birine münasebet yok. Mesela oynap jürgen degendek şu. Yakma mesela fakat şu çetel kirgen. So I've just asked her, you talked about people being dragged into these camps because of Islam. I told her, and I've said, look, we've heard of people going into these camps because they haven't prayed a day in their life. They have nothing to do with Islam. If you ask them what does La ilaha illallah mean, they probably wouldn't even know. What do you know about these people? This is the question I've asked, and we're going to get her answer now. Muşakta toxtalsak, mesela din bilan alaqası bo'lmagan insonlar uchun mesela. Bularga qanday muomala?
Muamele endi bek ig'ir o'tirmini ichida, lekin shu din bilan oyatlarga, ya'ni birinchi daraja deb madachu. Cho'ng kasalmi deb asha deydi. Meni oldimdan cho'ng kasalmi, kichik kasalmi degandan cho'ng kasal degani bizga o'xshash. Masalan, abaqadek men Alloh deb soldim, men cho'ng kasalga otilib ketdim endi. Cho'ng kasal bo'lib ketdim.
Kichik kasal.
Kichik kasal deganimiz ashunda to'rdan bir narsa tushirib solgan. O'ttiranchi kasal deganimiz butun chet elga chiqqan. Masalan, urug' tuqqanlari chet elda aloqalashgan degandek ashunda.
So she's saying the three levels, the top tier of these detainees, the Chinese put them at the top level. So they'll go, what level is he at? He's on the top level, meaning he's a practicing Muslim. Then there's a middle level. If they go, Fulan is at the middle level, meaning they have connections with people abroad. The bottom level are stuff that they've downloaded onto their phone, or they're probably using a VPN or some sort of social media app. So this is how they would, she says she would hear this. So how much disease does she have? Small disease, middle disease. And Miss Sumrat was high disease because she said Allah while she was being beaten. So she was considered high disease or top tier detainee. Anın linkin başka. Herhalde bu siz kaçlık vakit kaldınız o lagerda?
İşkay tudum, işkay turuş jarayonida nurg'un adam kirdi, nurg'un adam chiqdi. U chiqib ketganlarning nega ketganini tek so'rag'ilmaydi, nima ish qilganini tek so'rag'ilmaydi. Kelmaydi, ba'zilarini akirdi. Akirganning hammasi lekin tayoq yeb, ashunda bek ig'ir holda. Chunki siz hozir miyada siz kuchikligingiz uchun mashallah Adilkam yaxshi turibdi. Shuning o'xshash, mening yo'lishim chetallik bo'lganligi uchun men onunga o'xshash bek Alloh o'xshash bek zarbiga bek uchrab ketmadim. Chunki mening yo'lishim faqat to'xtamadi. Mayli saqchixon olamdi, nagil bo'lsa, o'z chetalik bo'lgandan keyin bo'ldi, men bu bolalarim bilan bu ayolim yo'q turmush menga nima emas degandek endi men ashta o'yladim, lekin menga endi unchalik bek zardi birinchi qatam shu kirgan vaqtimda shu mo'mina sen badang shuningga deb tayoq yedim. Undan boshqa meni achqib qalaymaqanligi so'rashlar bo'lmadi, lekin ash kunda o'xshash dorini yedim. Dorini yegizdi, og'zini ochib oshqizib, jutdingmi? Dori berdi bizga kunda uning ichida.
Her gün kan aldığın şey var mı künde?
Kunda emas. O qonni haftada bir qatam oldi. Haftada bir qatam qon oldi.
Bu dori bilan qonni nima uchun nima uchun oldi? Bir
Uni bilmaymiz. Masalan, men bir mashunda bir sanduqning ichida jiqiliq mashinchilik uzunliqda 8 sant 10 santlik deyli. Aşında her qıtım olganda 10ni oladi qarang. Ila qandan. 10 botulka. Endi
10
haftada
botilka bir kishidan.
bir kishi dashta oladi. Mening azaldan qinim oz. Qinim shunda oz. Her bir qanday qonaganda bosh qo'ydigan, ko'ngilishadigan. Doni yeymiz biz xuddi yilqi putqulimizda jon yo'q, bir jismimizda bir jon bor, bir xilliq hech qanday bir sig'inish deydigan hujayra insonda masalan u yerda balam qoldi, yo kalam qoldi, yo bo'lmasa dadam qoldi deydigan narsa yo'q. Bugun bir kun o'sil bo'ldi. Amaliyotda mening 4 yoshlik balam, 5 yoshlik balam, endi hammadan tatliq vaqtlari yo'q bu qizimning. Hatto u qizim men bo'lmasam uxlayamaydi. Yüzümni silab yatmasa uxlamaydigan bola. Men uningsiz bek haliqi tugishib ketsam bo'ldim bolalarimni sig'inib. Lekin ammo u dorining kuchimikin men hech qanday bir bolalarimni sig'indigan yoki bo'lmasa bugun bir kunim o'tib olsa, sog' salomat mushlarni o'tirib yatmasa, etib yatmasa, men mushkun bir kun o'tib olsam bo'ldi degandek u xiyol degan narsani o'tiritiga o'xshaydi u dorining.
Okay. She's saying that she was in the camp for about 2 months. And she's saying that overall, she didn't experience the amount of torture that others had. People would come in and out, and the ones that were coming back in, that were clearly just had a beating. The reason why she didn't experience that, because she gave me an example, like myself or her husband, who was overseas or is a Pakistani citizen. He was constantly working towards her freedom. So people like her that have relatives and that were working on their cases, they were treated a little better because there were people looking after them. But the ones who didn't have relations overseas, there was no one to hold China to account. They were treated far worse. She says what she went through was she was given a pill every day. Everyone was given a pill every day. And what the pill made them do, you asked a question at the beginning and then I sort of took over the interview. Where you said, what went through her mind. She was saying that this pill never made you think about your family or what's my husband doing, what's going outside. She goes, no, it was just like, I need to get through to today. I need to get through. It was just like, it didn't make me compassionate or considerate of other things. And she says that every week their blood was taken and she held her finger like this. 10 bottles of this size were taken from her every week, and it was taken from everyone else as well, like this every week. 10 of these. I don't know. She mentioned 10 mils, I believe. I don't know she said 10 mils like this, so 100 mils of blood. I'm not sure. 10 bottles like this were taken off her every week.
What was the pill? Something for the mind? You don't know?
According to her, she was saying after she took that pill, she would get these thoughts like she wouldn't think about anyone else. She wouldn't think about it. Like at that time, she had a 4 or 5-year-old kid. You would worry about your kid. What are they doing? They go, no. It was just like I need to get through to. Like they were like robots. They were just like focused on just making it through the day, not dying, basically.
And I want to ask her this thing. What does she think about Muslims with very big followings who are not speaking about this issue and they're not highlighting this issue out of fear of China or out of fear of the relationship between China and Muslim government? How does that make her feel that Muslims are doing this?
Are you talking about like Muslim influencers?
You could say people with large followings of any kind who are silent on this issue. How does that make her feel that we're silent on this to a large degree?
Suburazu sordi. Mushu jiq agashkichisi bo'lgan yoki bo'lmasa bir tashkilotlarning yoki bo'lmasa davlatdagi bishi bo'lgan bo'pmi musulmonlar, mushtaq insonlar, mushtaq zotlar mush Xitoydan qo'rqib, you're saying like they don't speak enough.
They don't speak at all. Most Muslims,
masalan mayli Xitoydan qo'rqish yoki bo'lmasa manfaat uchun bir sabablar tufaylidan yetarlik yoki bo'lmasa hech mush Uyg'ur masalasini mush lagerni bu to'g'riliqda gap qilmaydi. Mushundaq ishlarni ko'rgan chog'da, anglagan chog'da siz qanday hissiyotda bo'lsiz?
Shu men bek hayron. Men ash vatandagi vaqtimda hamma Uyg'urlar, chet eldagi Uyg'urlardan bek ümit kütüp yaşaydık. Çoqum biz üçün bir işlarni qilyotidi degandek. Men emas, hammamiz. Hatto Mekrgul Tursun chiqqan vaqtida bizga shu bir xabarlar keldi. Undadarniki xabar nimasidan bir ayol chiqib yolg'on so'zildi, anda qildi, manda qildi degandek. Shu chaqda biz mayli bo'yicha shunda qo'shib ketgan. Hanim bu chet eldiki hamdi. Mayli musulmon jamiyati bo'lsin va yoki bizniki Uyg'urlarimiz bizga ori chiqib o'tirg'i chiqqan bo'lsin, biz uchun xil yaxshi ishlar bo'layotgan o'xshaydi. Xudoyim bo'lsa bizni shunday yaxshi kunga nim qiladi deb. Kelgandan keyin chiqib men rostla hayron qoldim. Men hattoki intervyu berdigan vaqtida hattoki so'rdim kandaninki, "Menga bir musulmon davlatdagilar yoki bo'lmasa musulmonmi shu diniy tarafdagi, masalan, bizdagi islom din tarafdagi bir odamlar intervyu qilmasa, men shunda qo'shib ketdim. Ashlar bir uqsin shularmi? Biz sizlar 5 vaqt namoz o'taysizlar. Bizning vatanimizda hatto Ramazon tutilgan vaqtidami bizning Urumchidagi vatandagi uylarni bilasiz. Uylarimizda oshxonasida deriz bor. O birlerimizde deriz yo'qku bilasiz. Men alda qatib Ramazon tutgan vaqtida biz Uyg'urlar Xudoyim bo'lsa jannat topib deyman. Hammamiz biz kunduzi tomoqni etimlib ketsi o birning ichida turib zo'liq yegan vaqtlarimiz bor. Ro'z uchun.
So she's saying that obviously once she had left the camps, the Chinese government would obviously feed propaganda on their state television, and they would say like, oh look, there's another detainee who currently resides in the West, and they had put some news on about her, saying that she's lying about her experience in the camps. And then, but the Uyghurs translated it in their minds like, there are people out there that have left the camps and are talking about this issue. Like, even though it's state-run media, but they translate it into something positive. Things are happening. The world is supporting us. The Muslims are supporting us. But when she got to the West, she was shocked at especially how the Muslims were not raising enough awareness. So whenever Muslim channels or Muslim speakers do end up interviewing her, she's very happy because she speaks of an experience where in her last Ramadan, or her last few Ramadans while she was in East Turkestan, and I believe we talked about this on the show as well, that there are Muslims that still fast, but especially when you're waking up for sahur, when you turn on your lights and all this, from the outside it can be seen, and for that, you could be put into a camp. Or this person is obviously fasting and doing suhoor. That's why he's waking up 2, 3, 4 in the morning. But she's saying that they would pre-prepare their suhoor way before, and then the only room in their home where there is no window, they would do their suhoor in the toilet. They would have suhoor in the toilet. SubhanAllah. Because if they had it anywhere else, it would be seen. Their lights would be on, and they would be seen by the outside, and they would be reported on. They did suhoor. They would do, and I still believe. That's why I'm saying I still believe many people are still practicing Islam. They're doing dhikr in the heart and still practicing. And I had heard of fatwa of Sheikh saying, if you do get stopped, because we posted videos on Talk to Turkestan as well, where the kids are forced. During the day, they're given free food. People are made to drink. They're forced to drink. And shuyukh overseas, they've said, if you're forced to eat and drink and still carry on fasting. And Allah, inshallah, will accept those fasts. Do you have a question, Mr.
Yes.
Sabur?
So I want to ask her, a lot of people are asking here online. And in fact, we've had families of people in concentration camps commenting as well. A lot of people are asking, what can they do? What can they do? I want to ask you, is it really powerful to be loud on social media all the time about China, or is it something that has no impact? I just want her perspective on this.
Azdı nurgun inkas belki xumayma siz ko'ralamsiz. Men ma tarafda nurgun madamning kanali xili cho'ngchu, shunga nurgun inkaslar tushyaptir miyada. Nurgun haq hamda shu misha ta'sirlanib duolarni qilib, bu yerda shu biz nemish qilib beralaymiz deydi. Endi biz o'zimizmi necha vaqtni yaqin da'vatimiz, madamning qilgan ishim, mening qilgan ishim va sizmi necha vaqtni yaqin shu Facebooklarga shu Xitoylarning abdibashirsini ichib ishlarni qilyapsiz. Buning Xitoyga qarshi ovozimizni chiqarish bir foydasi bormi? Bekorlik qilyapmiz yoki bo'lmasa ovozimizni chiqaraveramdik. Buning foydasi sizcha qanchalik? Nima ish qilsin bu shu odatdagi puhra, odatdagi insonlar?
Men shu menimcha bo'lganda shu mediaga bekroq kuchsi bo'lamdikin deyman. Bütün musulmonlarga deydigan gapim Jungoning bir bizning vatanimizda shunchalik bir bechora bir Uyg'urlar yashaydi ekan. Ya ro'z tutolmaydi, ya namoz o'tayolmaydi. Butunlay endi xitoylashtirilib ketayotgan. Şuna bütün musulmonlarning endi biz uchun bir kuch chiqarishini, biz uchun Allohga duo qilishini, bizga ish chaqirishini so'rayman.
She said for the Muslims to make a lot of dua. She's indirectly said, you know, do your best, whatever you can. She didn't necessarily state exactly the answer to your question, but just do anything that you can. She's saying that, you know, she's mentioned those atrocities, the banning of religion and all these things, and just do your best. I mean, there are so many avenues out there. Indirectly, this is what she said. I've kind of paraphrased what she said here.
Yeah. So I want to ask her one last question, because obviously this has been very, very difficult for her. First, if you can tell her that I really appreciate her going through these stories, because it is very difficult for her, and I can see it's physically draining her talking about this. But just if you can let her know that.
Birinchisi, eng axirgi savolimdaydi va sizga rahmat etmoqchi bor, chunki bu mushtaq narsalarni deb qayta yashatqizib ko'ryapmiz, bak ig'ir hamda bak nim bo'tadi. Shuning bilan Alloh razı olsun, rahmat aytyapmiz sizga.
Mayli turmaning ichida bo'lsin, mayli turmaning sirtida bo'lsin. Turmaning sirtidagilarmi, hatto turmada yashaganda yashayapmiz. Xitoylarni bizning har birimizning uyiga Xitoylarni tuqqan deb akirvatdi. Har bir, hatto men 3 bolam bor, kichiki 5 yosh, oshningmi Xitoy tuqqani bor. Siz o'ylab boqing, meni qizim 12 yosh, uning tuqqani 22 yosh. Ba'zida meni uyimga kelib qo'nsin deydi. Siz o'ylab boqing. Sizlar qizingiz bu, siz o'ylab boqing. Aşında tuqqan bilan Xitoy bilan Uyg'ur tuqqan bo'lish siyosatlari bor. Endi 12 yoshli qizimni men 21 yoshli bir Xitoyning uyiga qo'nishga avatandim, siz o'ylab boqing. Mushunda qurbonlik olib ketadigan Uyg'urlar nurg'un, hatto er bilan ayollarni tuqqan qo'ydi. Cho'qim birisi-birisini uyiga berib qo'nisa deb bu aniq Xitoyning bir gapning o'chig'ini qilganda birisi bu uyga birisini solab berganligi bo'lmaydi nima. Mening qizimning rasmim bor, hozir abaya izlab topolmadim.
Sizning 12 yoshli qizingiz Xitoy hisobda erning uyiga berib qo'ndigan ishlar, chunki biz normal anglatganimiz Xitoylar Uyg'urlarning uyiga keldi.
Uyg'urlarmi? Hatto shu bir biz hatto Xitoylarning nima ish qildigan Xitoy u bilmaymiz. Bizni shuchudan bizni aholilar komitetidan buni so'ramanglar. Kim ekanligini so'ramanglar, sizlar bilan bo'ldi biz tuqqan qo'shmoq tuqqan qildik deb ashladidi. Meningmi birisi bor, bir Xitoy, cho'ng qayri Xitoydan birisi. 3 bola, 3 bolamningmi birdan 3tisi bor. Boshqalarga mayli, mening 12 yoshli qizimga 22 yoshli kirgan bir yosh bolani tuqqan qilib qo'yibdi. O bir necha qatim bir emas, bir necha qatim telefon desam, bugun men qizimni olib ketaman uyimga. Atlik maktabiga akab qo'yman deb. Men uning qanday odam ekanligini bilmasam, sizlarmi qizingiz, siz o'ylab boqing. 22 yoshli qizi bir o'g'a bolamda bir yoshga to'shdi degan gap. Men 12 yoshli qizimni qanday uni uyiga avatman. Yilidan maktabga borg'izmayman, yili og'rib qoldi deyman. Necha qatim mush ishdan to'silib.
Akhi, you know, we've heard of this thing. Obviously, she says thank you, but you know, we've heard, and you guys can totally find this online about the millions of Chinese officials that were sent to Uyghur homes. She's told us what she's personally experienced is that besides that, there's another system where each and every Uyghur, from the oldest to the youngest, even small kids, are paired together with a Han Chinese person. So her 12-year-old daughter was paired with a 22-year-old man. And and this is official, like every single person gets paired to the opposite sex, to a Chinese man, and her daughter was supposed to go and live with this man for periods at a time, but she would get calls, I'm going to pick her up tomorrow and then I'm going to give her back. Akhi, think about it, brothers and sisters. 12-year-old girl is going to live with a 22-year-old Chinese man, regardless of whether Chinese or not, like a man. But she would come up with excuses. She's sick. This happened, that happened. One way or another, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected her daughter. She actually never had to go through that. But can you imagine?
Bu defter bu defterge bizim manda numarımız koşuldu. Manda.
Okay.
Bununla bayrakı çıkkanda aşı Xitay tuqqanlar bilan yaqin o'tmay qolib qolsak, mana bu yer yezig'liq turdi, mana 90dan 95 numar. Asınız layoqatlik. 90dan töven asınız siz o'dan o'rganishga yo'llansiz. Men qaytadan tarbiyalashga. Mushunga defterdagi numarga loyiq odam bo'lish uchun biz sirtkilar shu defterga numarimiz tushib ketib qolsa, yana berib turmada yatimizda shu Xitoylar nima desa shuni qilmay amalimiz yo'q.
Demek o maxsus shu tuqqan bo'lishning kitibi shuni o'lchash.
Bu bayroqqa chiqqanda shu har dushanba kuni bayroqqa chiqqanda bunda Chesla bilan tambur turdim.
Okay.
Anadan keyin bu bayroqqa chiqqanlar emas, bularninki shu bayroqqa chiqqan vaqtda aktivlar bayroqqa chiqdi yoki tuqqanlar bilan yaxshi o'tdi. Uning uyiga berib qo'ndigan vaqtida berib qo'ndi. Yoki bo'lmasa u uyiga kelib qo'ngan vaqtida uni yaxshi kutdi. Atrofdagi Xitoylar bilan yaxshi o'tdi. Degandek ashunda numarimiz tushib ketdi deb mush defterdagi numar tushib ketsa yer berib so'nib yotimiz.
Okay. So you've all heard of the social credit system in China. There was an episode of this on Black Mirror. But for the Uyghurs, what happens here is she was showing a book. That book is there are sections in the book. One of the main sections is every morning, and these are for people outside of the camps. They have to rock up to flag raising ceremonies, and how they go to those ceremonies, like did they go enthusiastically, or were they restless? Did they come late? So it's basically roll call, and it gets signed off like a teacher would. Another section is how well did they get along with their partners that they were assigned. When the Chinese people invited their Uyghur partners, did they come on time? Or when the Uyghurs were supposed to host their Chinese partners, did they host them very enthusiastically? Did they treat them well? Or how well did they treat them? All of these things are required. And generally, how well are you getting on with your Han Chinese neighbors? All of this is recorded. You have to keep your points above. So it's a score of out of 100. You have to keep your points above 90. If it goes below 90 or lower than that, depending on how low you went back into the camp. So that's something handed out directly from the government, and she's just like physical proof. She just showed us.
Xitoylarni uyiga beribmi? Tamoq yeyishinglar kerak. Aşağı berib, aşla etken tamoqni yeyishinglar kerak. Yuqoridan bevas buyruq tushdi. Butun Uyg'ur bugun Xitoy tuqqanning uyiga berib tamoq yeydiganmi, yeysizlar deb buyruq tushdi qarang. Yani ündedarning bizning toplarimiz bor. Her bir mesela manchi binani bir adam, sho'chini bir adam boshqardi. Topda uchirib keldi. Bugun tuqqanlarning uyiga barsizlar, atda soat manchida. Hammanglar barsizlar dedi. Borgandan keyin ular mavu
look at this.
Rangsiz chiqib qopti, bu yaxshi chiqmabdi. Cho'shqining go'shini oldimizga tizib bizga vazifa tushgan. Mushni sizlar yemsanglar bo'lmaydi. Mush tamoqni. deb biz buni ko'nmagan, biz qo'y go'shti yeb ko'ngan, biz bu hatto biz harom demaymiz deb biz musulmon biz harom buni yemaymiz demaymiz hatto deymiz biz buni ko'nmabdimiz yeyishga desa bizga yuqoridan mushuni yeganni rasm tatib yo'llanglar degan unda bo'lsa xafa bo'lmay cho'kangda ilib og'zingni tuyugimda akagan holatni akagan deb sizlar o'ylab boqinglar bir musulmon qanday cho'shqining go'shtini yeyish bunda shunchalik saskinimiz endi bu cho'shqining go'shtini bizga Alloh egam harom deb yaratgan osh rasmga tushmasang bo'lmaydi bizga yuqoridan buyruq bor deb osh cho'shqining go'shtini oldimizga akilib rasmni tatqizib andan keyin ular yuqoriga yo'llaydi ekan qarang men qo'y yemedim endi qanchalik odam yeyotdi dana uni
Okay, so what happens is before they actually go on, visiting their Chinese partners or relatives or whatever you want to call them, every building or a few buildings, they are put into, say, one WhatsApp group or one WeChat group, sorry, because they don't use WhatsApp, WeChat group. And so they'll go, all right, guys, tomorrow you're going to have dinner at your Chinese friend's house or partner's house. And you have to eat the food. So for her, when she went, so what are the Chinese people going to cook up? They cook up pork in front of her and she has to eat it. So for her, she said, look, she can't say it's haram. So she goes, look, I'm not used to eating this food because, I grew up with lamb meat. If she mentions that this is forbidden for Uyghurs or according to Islam, she'll be thrown. So this particular, her partner did something, I would say, I interpret it good for her. He told her, look, I have to get at least a photo of you looking like you are eating the food. So just bring the meat to your mouth and just, with your chopsticks, and I'll take a photo and I'll send it to my officials. But she's saying, imagine the people that are actually eating and drinking. And so for her, she's in a way, I don't know if you call that lucky, but luckier than most that she wasn't actually made to eat it. She, but Uyghurs are being forced, and they outright told her, look, I'm being forced to do this to you. So as soon as you said it looked like you were going to close off, she really wanted to get whatever she could remember into this as well. Bu sizning tuqqanlaringiz ular Xitoyga tuqqanlarmi? Okay, so that's an image of when her family went and visited their Chinese relatives.
So I just want to ask this last question.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to have her again. This time maybe speaking about it from a different perspective, which is her life in the UK, her life in the USA, because that's something we didn't get time for. But I want to know about how she adjusted and what she thinks we should be doing. But I want to ask her this question, which is that, do you think right now that the situation that's taking place in Chinese-occupied East Turkestan, do you think if this continues and China continues with its policies, do you think in 20 years' time there'll be anybody that could say La ilaha illallah?
Abay deganda sizning cho'qim kilaqitim qayta akagisi bor, chunki sizning hozirgi hayotingizda masalan Amerika qanday ko'nish to'g'riliqmi gap qilgisi bor, lekin hozir nayt uzrab ketdi. Cho'qim kilaqitim yana sizni taklif qilgisi bor ekan.
Yana bir ish degim kelib qoldi, shu azrim ko'rayotganlar jiqqa. Musulmon qarindoshlarga deydiganim, bizning Uyg'ur ayollarining hammasini tug'mas operatsiyasi qilib, ikkini tug'pogan ayollarning hammasini tug'mas operatsiyasi majburiy, hatto men shuning ichida bor. Meni har qanday organning meni astoydil tekshirishini tekshirman desam men tayyor. Meni qanday usulda tug'mas operatsiyasi qildiribdi. Majburiy operib biz Uyg'ur ayollarining hammasini ikkini tug'pogandan keyin bu Alloh egammi bir kechirmaydigan ishlar bu ayollarni bunday qilish. Menimcha bir ig'ir gunoh qiyatidi. O'ylab boqinglar, bu bir biz Uyg'urlarni bir qirg'inchilik deyli, bu endi bu bir qirg'inchilik bu. Har qanday Uyg'ur ayollarni ikkini tug'pogan ayol bo'lsa-ham shu majburiy holda tug'mas operatsiyasi qilib bordi. Majburiy holatda.
Tamam. Shu gapingizni tushundirma va qo'shimcha sizce deydi. Muşu Xitoyning mushu zulmi davom qilaversa, 20 yillardan keyin shu yerda vatanimizda la ilaha illalloh deydigan insonlar qolarmi sizce deydi. O'sha davom qilaversa to'xtamay. Okay. So she wanted to add.
Hazır mı diyemeydi hiç kim uç kaşkara?
Yo'q demoqchi bo'lganligi albatta deyamaydi, lekin 20 yildan keyin rasmiyligi unutilib kallasidimi bo'lmaydiganligi, ishchidimi asli deyishim kerakdiligi, zulm o kadar davom qilib tamoman sayriq Uyg'urlar deymiz-ku, tamoman dindan yo'qolib ketdi.
Yo'qotdi albatta. Hozir deb chaqlashtiryapti Xitoy bilan. Deb manchilik mukofot, Xitoy bilan to'y qilsang manchilik mukofot beramiz, uy beramiz, zamin beramiz, yer beramiz, nima desang shu. Sana har qanday sharoitni yaxshilab beramiz degandan keyin bu Xitoylar degan unmay Uyg'ur qizlar unmasa hatto shu yuqori hukumatlar kirib deydi, maqzolman unmidi degandan keyin o sening idirangda chatoq bor. Sen Xitoyga millatbozlik qilding. Sen yana o'zingning dini bo'yicha mangding. Xitoyga to'y qilsa gunoh bo'ldi, harom deb turib, sen bunday qilding deb opirib uydagilarni hammasini opirib sulayotadigan gap. U hozir qizlar bekor to'y qilmayapti shu. Uyning oilasidan qurbon bo'lib ketadi bechora Uyg'ur qizlari.
So to answer your question, she, in a nutshell, she said no, there won't be anyone to say la ilaha illallah, and she's given a few reasons of this right now, and she's personally gone through this. Where women, if they've already given birth to two children, that they are forced to go, have an operation where they can no longer give birth. I don't know what you'd call that operation, but an operation like that. And she's gone through that, and she's open to have any doctors test her to see how that operation had taken place, whether it was forced or whether it was because of a disease. And she's saying that, and that's genocide, open genocide, where you're, operating on women not to have babies. And number two, that the Uyghur women are forced to marry Chinese men, and if they do not, then you are diseased, there's something wrong with you, you are not complying, and so you'll be punished. So the Uyghur women are forced, and so in 20 years' time, the demographic of the Uyghurs will change, and this is what she's finished with.
If you could tell her from Islam's history, there were always times where it looked like the situation was hopeless. Yet none knows the soldiers of Allah except Allah, and it could be something invisible. It could be something as small as whatever it is, and just tell her that we will not rest. The Muslims will not rest till East Turkestan has the status that it had in the 1930s, and till every wrong is replied. And we will not rest till that happens, inshallah, biiznillah.
Deydi, biz mushu tarix qarasak, mushu ba'zan musulmon toplumlarga bir faqat Uyg'urlarga emas, nurg'un musulmon toplumlarga beklam qirilib ketgan, beklam umidsiz bo'lgan ahvollar bor, lekin Alloh endi bilmaymiz, masalan virus hech kim ko'ramaydigan bir shaklda Xitoylarni joylayotdi, hatto cho'ng cho'ng davlatlarni tizga keltirdi. Biz bilolmaymiz Allohning o'zining askarlarini avatidi mushu nohaqchilik tugmagicha, hatto bu nohaqchilikning haqqini olmagicha va Sharq Turkiston burungi shu o'zining davlatiga qaytmagicha biz jim turmaymiz, biz davomli kuchimiz qo'limizdan kelishicha davatdir. Shu siz uchun bir umid, bir so'z qoldirib qo'yg'isi keldi.
İnşallah. Men bu yo'ldoshim chet ellik bo'lganligi uchun men shunday bir fursat berib Allohga bir zulmdan qutulib qochib chiqa oldim. Manga o'xshash nurg'un ayollar hozir yetyapti. Mening bir ta'lim Xudoyim menga bir chiqib xuddi bir Allohning gapini anglat. Sen Allah uchun sen bir destek bo'l, sen ashlar uchun qo'p degandek men endi xili gap so'zim joyida xili bo'lganligi uchun men Xudoyim Alloh nisb qildi. Lekin menga o'xshash ko'rmangi mushtabda Qaysi birisi qanchalik ezilyotdi, hammasi bizning Uyg'urlarning hozir 99%imiz musulmon. Bütün musulmon jamiyatiga deydiganim biz uchun bir o'rinda qo'ysa, bütün musulmonlarga deydiganim. Şuna men her qachon intervyu bergan vaqtimda musulmon davlatlarga, musulmonlar haqida emasman. Mushu diniy tarafdan intervyu bo'lsa men bak qo'shib ketman. Chunki mushu musulmonlar nima uchun biz uchun o'rtilmaydi? Bizdek bir bichara Uyg'ur, bichara musulmonlar uchun nima uchun o'rtilmaydi? Deb shunga bugun men siz bilan ko'rishganimda bak qo'shildim. Biz uchun kuch chiqarganingizga, biz uchun so'zganligingiz uchun men bugun bak hayacanlandım özümü. Sizdek bir musulmanga, bir addi bir musulmanım turup, sizdek bir musulmanga özümün derdini anlatacağım için ben şunçalık xursand oldum bugün.
She's thankful that she's inspired to keep going because at the end of the day, like she was lucky, she was able to leave that camp because of her husband. She's he's a citizen of another country, and the story that she's heard from inside the camp, she feels like it's a duty upon her to share those stories, and she's very happy to especially get interviews from Muslims like yourself, and to because if you, I mean, she's written her name incorrectly on this. It's Zumrat Dawood, like the T. If you Google this, you can find her interviews on Western media, but she especially wants to do more interviews to talk to the Muslim world and to kind of get them, up on their feet and take action. And she's very grateful to you for giving her an opportunity to do so, because on your channel you've obviously got many Muslim followers.
Yeah, if you can ask her to make dua that we collectively, the Muslims, we do not fail the Uyghur Muslims in the same way that the Spanish were attacking the Muslims and they were let down and that civilization ended. Just ask her that is what we are facing, and that's what we want her to make dua that we are saved from.
Deydi, axirgi sizni bilan talab qildi. Siz mushu bizga deydi, mushu ovoz anglatuvchilarga bizga duo qilsangiz, chunki ayni vaqtida Andalus deb angladingiz, İspanyolda o'zimizning bir islom toplum bir davlat batdi. Shuningga o'xshab qolmasin, chunki necha yuz yil oldin shu yerki İspanya davlati shu yerki musulmonlar yo'q qilib, hozir islom haqida hech qanday narsa qolmadi. Yani şununla o'xshab qolmaslik uchun Uyg'urlar shununga o'xshab qolmaslik uchun siz bizga duo qiling.
Amin, amin.
So Arsalan, this is the thing that, obviously actually one last message you can give to her from me is that just simply thank you. And I'm definitely, for the rest of whatever days are left in Ramadan, I'll definitely be making dua for her and her family, because I've really been inspired by her bravery, by her strength, by her determination. They tried to break her, but she came back stronger, and she's going to be a monster for them now, because she's out and she's going to be loud and she's going to inspire people like me and millions of other people across the world, inshallah.
Аңақы sizga deydigan so'zi, mushu Ramazonning oxirgi kunlar qoldi. Men sizlar uchun, siz uchun, oilangiz uchun jiq duo qilaman. Anadan keyin siz ashu Xitoy sizni ashu chiqib parchalayman deb, sizni yo'q qilaman deb shunchalik tirishdi. Unda bo'lmay siz shu yerdan chiqib shunchalik kuchlanib, o'sha yerda shu Uyg'urlarning dardini dunyoga aytyapsiz. Men sizdan nurg'un ilhom oldim va inshaalloh mush ekran orqali boshqalarga cho'qim ilhom berasiz. Shu Xitoy parchalayman dedi sizni, ammo siz teximo kuchlik bir holga nim qilib, siz shu Uyg'urlarning dardini dunyoga anlatyapsiz. Men nurg'un bekchiq ilhom oldim va ishonamanki buni ko'rayotgan qarindoshlar, chunki bularning ergashishida bekchiqchu, cho'qim sizdan ilhom oldi. Allah razı olsun.
Amerikaga kep, rahmet. Men Amerikaga kep mushu New Yorkda Birleşken Devletler Teşkilatı'nın uyuşturgan guvalık söhbeti qatnaşqandan keyin meni aşağıda söz qilding deb Xitoy dadamni soqchiqanlığa akirkitib Tapmızda kadar kara. Dadamdan mı ayrıldım ben?
So last thing, as you mentioned, you said China tried to break her, but what had happened was her first official witness testimony she gave in New York at the United Nations office. After that, after she gave, if I'm not mistaken, men Tuniye sizge bir video evettim. Zübeyre Hanım yanınızda oturup şu metti, şu guvalık metti. So you know the reaction video that you made yesterday with the translator sitting next to Miss Sumrat. After that witness testimony, the Chinese, the authorities interrogated her father. Neç yaşta dadınız şu vafat boğan, şehit boğan vakti?
70 neç yaş, lekin bek demendi. 70 neç yaş kirgen.
So they...
Xitay bir xoşumuz vatdi, o dukandardi. O Uygurlar men bil alaqlaşamaydı WeChat'ta. O Xitay dukandardan biz ba'zi bir narsa alsaq telefon qutuq açıp birdi. O Xitayni men undadardi jüetmepdim men. Şu manga sen barmı degende men ko'ngilishmadim. 1-2 saatdan keyin shu qarasam, dadang o'lib tugab ketdi, hammadan kirib ketib bordi dedi. Shunga men yo'ldoshim menga gap berdi. Nim deb tugab ketdi, so'ra da'vagatdi. Ha, qayerga odam saqchixonada turaversa, sen o'ylab baq, bardosh bera olamda deb yozibdi. U Xitoy bo'lgandan keyin qo'rqmaylamchu. Saqchixonada turaversa, 70 necha odam, yosh odamlar o'lib ketib bordi deb yozibdi Xitoycha. Ash xatlardan tatib qo'ydi.
So what happened was she has a neighbor. Who has a neighbor, and what happened was, as soon as she gave that testimony that you did a reaction video on, her father was called in to authorities. Miss Zumrat's father was called into authorities, and he was interrogated for ages. So her neighbor, or her father's neighbor, messaged her from inside, the neighbor, saying bravely, how can they interrogate this man for such a long time? And a man of his age, in his 70s, would not be able to take it. The youth are dying. What's going to happen to this man? And she has that message saved. She got a screenshot of it. And not long after that, her father, and even though he was in his 70s, very healthy man, and because she spoke up, they eventually killed her father. So she's really sacrificed a lot to say this. And as I mentioned before, for the viewers, there are many out there, but there are many former detainees out there living in the West and other countries, but only a handful of them are speaking up, because this is the sort of repercussions that you'll get. And I'm sorry to take over Sabur just a little bit. I mean, she's lived through this. I mean, I compare it to the United States. I mean, I've said this a few times. Edward Snowden, right? Edward Snowden leaked documents to the whole world about American secrets, and his family is living safely in the United States. They're not being touched. They may be monitored, but they're not being touched. They're living freely. But here, someone, and this is why many Uyghurs do not speak up, is because of repercussions. I know people, 90, 100 members of their family, cousins, aunties, uncles, locked up. So, and I'll mention one more thing, and I shouldn't, but again, comparing oppressions. I had a brother call me from Kashmir the other day, doing a podcast, and we know what's happening in Kashmir. A lot of oppression. There is oppression, but he was able to call me. He's got a podcast show, and he was interviewing me about the dhulm that is happening in East Turkestan when he himself is going through dhulm. But that just goes to show still how free the Kashmiris are. I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not saying that there's no oppression, but wallahi, look at the difference. And we get put into camps for having WhatsApp on our phones. So
tell her from us that her father is Shaheed, inshallah, and they buried him, but in burying him, they also buried a seed, which is you, and you're going to grow and you're going to take revenge for what has happened to him using your voice.
Okay, inşallah dadınız şehit oldu inşallah ve şu dadınız herhalde kümdü şunak mı?
u yerda namoz tushirish, nikoh o'qish degan narsalar yo'q.
Lekin yaga qo'ydimi?
Hech nimani bilmadim. Yaga qo'ydimmi, qanday qildi uni bilmadim.
Okay, another thing here.
Uningdagi o'qitaymi meni juvatdi. Men bu yerda tashqi ishlarga buning dedimda, men misha so'zlaganligim uchun meni dadam bilib ketdi deb. Endi Facebooklarga chiqqansam bu bir cho'ng g'ulg'ulib ketdimi, o'qitaymi birdan meni juvatdi. Ya kümbetkenni, ya kuydirvetkenni, ya namoz tushagini, nega kümgenni hech nimani bilmayman.
Şu abay degeni bunun hozir men unimi tushundirma. Bunun kallasida kümdi deb o'ylaydi chu. Kümgandan keyin endi shumi bir yiltiz bo'lib siz endi shu dadangizning yiltiz bo'lib endi bu shu Xitoyga qarshi Xitoyning abtibashisini ichishga davom qilasiz deb. Lekin ma gapingizni bir tushundiray. Brother, yani from your own yani we assume people get buried after they die, but she says she actually doesn't know whether he was buried or not because a janaza, and we talked about this before, she actually has no proof. She actually doesn't know whether her father was buried or not, the location of the burial. None of this could be mentioned. She just knows that her father is deceased, but into what kind, and we've talked about this before, that's her father, as to how was he we talked about this. Was he cremated? You know, was he tortured beforehand and they had to get rid of the evidence? She actually does not know.
I don't know what to say.
I mean, like we assume these things, you know, oh, they're buried and then no. Because even things like doing nikah or burials or like slightest. Remember I said if salamu alaikum is not allowed, then forget anything and everything else.
Meni opam burun tugab ketgan. Men Pokistonga keldim, men odan Urumchidan. Shu kelgan vaqtimda qabrlarni, opamning qabrisini yani ishiltamiz deb Xitoy hukumati bevosita o qabridagi o'liklarni aytinglar debdi. Hozir aytinglar deb mush yerlikdan hamma o'liklarni ko'lab chiqib. Mana mush hammasi o'lik numar qo'ygan.
Bu sizning opangizning yotgan yerimitti?
To'xtam hozir batib birmi.
She's talking about how her mother died many years ago, and even while she was in Pakistan, the Chinese authorities got into contact with her, and we've seen this the moving or the destruction of cemeteries and being turned into car parks. Whether or not this happened, she's explaining to us now that they moved the burial of where her mother was buried, and she's trying to find the image of that now. Because she's, you know, gotten hold, like wearing this now, she just wants to just tell all. So, yeah.
Mesela mushundaq butun chiqqan o'laklarnimi, butun chiqqan bo'lsa-mu, mana mana butun chiqqan yotgani shu.
Bu necha yil oldin yotqizib bo'lgan kishining nimasini chiqadi?
O'likini shu qabrdan chiqarib. Qabrdan chiqarib, mushundaq kichik xaltalarga ilib.
So they've taken out the burials. Like the first image she showed was, you know, probably bones because after a few years, and then they put them into those bags, like, you know, like a garbage bag, like white garbage bags.
Hozircha biz o'rin yo'q. Yani biz ishiltimiz. Yani sizlar hozircha yani ishiltimiz hozircha aketganlar bo'lsa aketmasanglar biz ayatlikka mashina sotamiz bu yerga. Hech kim o'zining ota-onasining ustixonlarining talog'i chiqib u yerga yeyib ketishni xohlamaydi. Hamma Uyg'urlar shu o'laklarning jasadlarining hammasini uylarga akitib, o'gizlarda yoki bir yerga yarasli uylarda ashundoq saqlab, qachon bizga bir yer o'rni bera, qachon biz mana bir joyga kun bitamiz degandek.
So she's saying that
Ülükki tehi gün yok. Hayatga tehi gün yok. Qarang. İş qilib bizning musulmonlarning hech qaysi kun yo'q u yerda.
Subhanallah. She's saying that once you saw the bag, right? So basically, the call is made out, guys, get the remains of your family. If you don't, a day or two later, the bulldozers will come and like, we need this land. And we've seen reports about this, making car parks or building shopping centers over them. And then they take it and they literally keep it around their home. They don't bury it anywhere, waiting for the day that the government gives them a bit of land to rebury their parents or whatever. Imagine that. You got to dig up. You got to take your parents' remains in a bag, have it with you, and then, yeah.
Her birimizden türmeden çıkan her qanday Uyg'urlar bo'ladi. Telefonimizda bunda applarimiz bor.
So and you guys can see this as well. Any Uyghur that leaves those camps are made to download that app into their phone. She's going to explain now what that app does.
Bu app hamda telefonimizda bo'lsa, buningda masalan birasi telefon qasmi masalan assalomu alaykum degan gapdan tortib. Assalomu alaykum deb demaymiz biz hozir. Telefonimizda shu bo'lsa masalan Allah, assalomu alaykum yoki bo'lmasa astag'firullah, tavba deymiz-ku biz masalan islomiy gaplar u. Ashaq gapning hech qandig'ini qo'ymay suzib oldim bir narsa.
So that thing, and I'm sure you've understood there what that app does, is that it records everything you say. So especially it'll record your assalamu alaikums, your Islamic terminology, and then they'll grab you after that. Yeah.
Şu biz hech qachon birasining uyiga borganda yo birasini ko'rishganda assalomu alaykum degan gapni demaymiz. Birasi bilan telefon so'zlashgan vaqtimizda faqat demaymiz o gapni.
Yeah. So we no longer say assalamu alaikum anymore. And what your viewers need to understand is you could be the most unreligious person in the world, because Islam is so integrated into Uyghur culture. The most unreligious person, when they meet you, they'll say saying assalamu alaikum is like saying hi. It's the equivalent to hi. So now you've got to, you've got to be active in not saying it. You've got to really control yourself on how you use your words. You've got to be very careful.
Mani ko'rdingizmi ki bütün do'konlarga mushu narsani bekitibdi.
Bu nima o?
Bu bir bu uskuna orqali masalan har qanday do'konda bor. Tijoratchilar qo'llanmasa da bir qo'llanma bor. U qo'llanmadiki, masalan siz do'konga kirib halol tomoq bormi desangiz, buni do'kondor basmay amal yo'q. 5 minut, 2 minutdan keyin saqchi gap bo'ldi. Sen halol tomoq bor deding.
So
masalan do'kon masalan Talla bozor deylik, o'sha yerda bo'lib qolsa pichoq, chaydo olganlar bo'lib qolsa buni bosadi. Birisi pichoq oldi, chaydo oldi deb. Uning siz pichoq chaydo sotamaydi. Ondan keyin masalan Navoiyxonda bo'lib qoldi deylik, mana shu. Bütün tijoratchilar bordi. Navoiyxondan 10 nondan ortiq non olsa, u cho'qim bu Navoiychi buni bosmay qolmaydi. Chunki 10 non oldi, bu cho'qim uyda bir faoliyat qiladi, diniy faoliyat demdiki.
Wow.
Am 10 nonni Uyg'ur 10 nonni olmaydi. Yüreklik aldı. Aşınçılık derecede bu ticaretçiler kullanmasının içinde Uygurlarının ağan mahsulatlarının içinde ne mi setip ağan olsa, şununla ait gumanlık işler olsa, çokum 500 metrede bir cimuzan deyimiz var mı? 500 metrede bir sakçı. 500 metre emez, 300 metre. 200 metrede mi batı? Aşular tezden kilip, aşu derhal, enzi qatarda bir dilo qatarda sen mesela Müslüman tamak var mı dedin degandek, yoki bo'lmasa ondan nima uchun olding, yoki bo'lmasa pichoq olsa, chaydo olsa degandek, mushu tijoratchilar qo'llanmasdiki, shu turlar bo'yicha mushu narsa orqali nurg'un odam turmaga kirib ketdi mana.
So she's saying that device there is put into every shop, every market, and that records everything that you buy. So when you go up and you ask for, are there any halal products here, or can you, do you have this in the halal version that records it? And because and you've seen this in the Western news, where every 100 meters or 200 meters there are police posts. They get notified and they come. So that's one, asking for halal products. Number two, if you've asked for any knives for chopping, if you've asked for knives and things like this. Another one is, get this, if you're asking for large quantities, or if you're buying large quantities of food. So if you're one person and you're buying 10 loaves of bread, the shop owner hits that because they realize something's off. Then they come, why are you buying 10 loaves of bread? Who are you hosting at home? So every little bit of your life is monitored, from how many loaves of bread you're buying, the quantities of food you're buying, whether you're asking for something halal or not, if you're buying knives or just normal cooking products, cooking utensils. So anything, and beforehand, these shopkeepers are told what to look out for. So they press that button, and those police are notified, and they come right away within seconds, she says.
Nurgun Şəhərdən bağan ziyaretçiler boldu. Bizning Şərqi Türkistanğa berip bu ahvollarni tekshirgan boldi. Lekin mushu vaqtlarda shu hattoki men ba vaqtimda bir chaqda tekshirish umiki bo'lgan. Mushu chet eldan nereden bağını bilmayman. Dadamlarga ashta debdiki bugun cho'qim 5 vaqt namozni masjidda o'taysan. Tekshiruvchilar kelsa manda deysan. Tekshiruvchilar kelganda biz 5 vaqt namozni xotirjam o'tayotimiz. Biz shunda yaxshi bizga hukumat nim qilyapti, bizni hech qanday dindan to'smadi deysan, onda deysan, manda deysan deb hech qachon ichilib boqmagan, to'pi besib ketgan masjidni ichib, butun Uyg'urlarning uyiga kundan birdan uyiga kirib, osh tekshiruvchilarning ko'zini bo'yash uchun hammasiga bormaymiz desa bir vaqt namozing 20 qo'yib, bir kun namoz o'tsang 100 qo'yib beramiz sana. Cho'qim chiqishing kerak. Endi qo'y chiqasa deb, voy yo'li masjidga chiqsaq tutib oldi ekansizlar. Endi bo'lgan yana masjidga chiqdi ekansizlar desa, biz dedik-ku, mana biz va'da at tekshiruvchilar bor, falon pistonchilar cho'qim, osh tekshiruvchilar kelganda shular oldiga chiqib so'zlaydi degandek ashundaq yolg'on yovdaq gaplarni qildi. Anadan keyin mushu to'y qilgan, masalan chet ellik, masalan vatanimizdagi chet elliklarning uyiga mush tekshiruvchilar keldimi, har birimizning uyida, masalan mening yo'ldoshim chet ellik-ku, har birimizning uyida hali Gobodadining adami yotadi. Chunki Uyg'urlar qo'rqib ularga biz menda bo'atimiz demaydi. Chet elliklarni o'zining tili orqali ashlarga tushuntirib qo'ymasin. Ashlarga voy bunda emas, malan bek izyotdi degandek o'zining tili bo'yicha deb qolmasin deb, Xudoning qutlug Xudoning kuni. Endi mening yo'ldoshim Pokistonlik, men atrofdagi to'y qilganlarni bilaman. Men o'xshash Pokiston to'y qilgan ya u yerlik do'stlarim bor. Hammasiga ashunda deydi, oqsham, sizlar uyda yotdimi? Saqchilar deb aşağı deyishimiz qarang. Har birimizning uyida Gobodadining adami bir kun bugun sizlar uyda yotamiz degandikilar, yuqoridan tekshiruvchilar kelibdi. Shuni bizning uyda yotdik deb o'ylaymiz. Bir vaqtlarda telefon kelib bo'ldi deganda ular ketadi qarang. Shu bizni ash tekshiruvchilarga bir narsa deb qolmasin deb.
Okay, so what happens is before we get into it, there's one question here by someone called Heaven. Saying that, so the shopkeepers are collaborating with the government. To answer your question, my brother or sister, they have to collaborate. Otherwise, they themselves will be put into camps. To go back to her incident, some foreign investigators or journalists do come. And when they do come, people like Zumrat or like whole neighborhoods are notified. And Chinese officials then go and sleep in their homes. Because when they go and investigate these people, they want to record what they're saying to those journalists. So even when they're being, you know how we talk about foreign journalists, even if they go in and interview these people, because the Chinese authorities are right there with you within the interview, they record everything you say. So even when foreign investigators interview you, you can't speak freely, because when they leave, they'll take care of you. Another thing, when these foreign investigators come, they tell the people what to say, that your Islam is, and we've seen these interviews, the government lets us practice freely, and people are paid, she said, and I've seen this on Western media as well, the equivalent to $3, $3 per salah, per prayer. So if you've prayed your 5 daily prayers, that's around $18, which is around I mean, today it's much more in Chinese money, but back then it would have been like 100 yuan or 100 RMB. So when these foreign investigators do come, whole neighborhoods are basically told to act and like to fill up the mosque and to to show these investigators so they can film it and that everything is as normal.
So the very fact that they are scared of these Western journalists and the very fact that they're scared of people like Sister Zumrat shows that they do care about what the world thinks.
Bu yerda sizga endi ko'rmanlarga davtiri demak shu yuzini saqlash uchun demak shu chet el nimdab qolarki deb shunchalik kuchaygan bo'lsa haqiqatan menzi deymiz-ku endi haqiqatan shu yanalar shu matbuotdan tashviqotdan mustaqlasin bak qo'rqaydi ekan. Demak o'sha qo'rqaydigan yeri bor ekan. Ya'ni bu yerga ko'rmanlarga davtiri jiqroq tashviqot qilishimiz kerak.
Albatta, mening yo'ldoshimmi meni shu qutqizish uchun konsulxonada 2 qatam bordi. Bir qatam borgan vaqtida biz hozir seni xotirjam bo'l ketgin, biz ishingni qilib bermaymiz, ayolingni achib qirdigan bo'ldi dedi. Borgandan keyin mening hech qanday izdak so'rag'imni hech qanday bir chiqirpamabdi. 2 qatam beribdi konsulga. 2-chi qatam borgan vaqtida konsulga to'la bizga o'xshash, menga o'xshash to'y qilganlar bek chiqdi. Bo'libmi Pokistonda to'y qilganlar necha ming xotin kishi bor. Hammamiz biroq tutib ketgandan keyin bularning kalisi qat'iy hammasi berib bergandan keyin Pokiston konsulxonasining oldiga, Beyjingdagi konsulxonasining oldiga. Oxirida undan keyin bu yo'ldoshim qatorliq bir necha og'inlari ashada turiblar. Bo'ldi biz ashadagi muxbir chaqiramiz. Amerikaning, Angliyaning muxbirlarini chaqiramiz degandan keyin bular konsuldan emas, oyadagi muxbirlardan rost chaqirib qolsa deganda qilib birdamda go'nganting deymiz-ku endi. Jamoat xavfsizlik idorasidan telefon kelib bularga. Voy xotirjam bo'linglar, mush qatam cho'qim bijirimiz olmadi deb. Unda bo'lsa oldin qatam boshlab dedinglar, bu qatam bo'lmaschu, siz xotirjam bo'linglar, pasportingni avatsang biz sana hozir ishingni qilg'ashtiramiz deb. Hamma qilib pasport avatsa birdamda 850 ning biletni ap bo'ldik. Aeroplanga chiqsang burada oydirimga shu pasportni ko'tarib qolsang, qaytib kelsa aeroplan biletni biz ap berdik go'ngantingdan deb. Hattoki Beyjingdan konsulxonaning oldida askarlik aloqa nim qilayotgan biz uchun nim qilib bo'lgan yo'ldoshim yana bir do'st eshikisiga o'zlari biletni evitib kech soat 8dan 50 ning Beyjingdan Urumchiga mangdigan aeroplan biletni evitib kelsan ayoling bor debdi. Shu aytsa qarasa shu meni qo'yib berdi shu. Ashunchalik darajada qo'rqdim. Tashviqot bizning shu qiliqlarimizdan.
Beijingdagi Pakistan konsulxonasimi?
Ha.
Okay. So what happened was she goes
Pakistan konsulxonasining oldida turgandan keyin bu muxbir chaqiramiz debdi. Bu konsulxonaga kirib bu ish bijagil bo'lmadi. Bularmi bizni alaqacha deymiz endi masalan qabul qilmadi bularmi? To'lib odamlarga kelavergandan keyin deb ashta desa shuni bilan u birdamda biz bo'ldi biz bularni qilmadi biz muxbir chaqiraylik. Washington Post'lamda ya bo'lmasa BBC, NBC hamma tushunmayman u muxbirlarni uchoqlarda. Asha hammasini chaqiramiz mishada. Ashlarga bir narsa deymiz. Bularni gunohi nima? Ya o'g'ri, ya yanchukchi, ya nima? Nimish qilib tutildi? Ya bizning qo'limizga bir narsa bersin. Yoki bo'lmasa beka uni tutib ketmasin deb ashlar qilgandan keyin bu atrofdagilar u birdamdan ichida demamda go'ngantenga telefon qilib, "Voy, mala muxbir chaqirimiz da'vatdi" degandek tanga go'nganten bilan aloqa qilishib. Birdam tashlar bo'ldi, bo'g'ayishmi shu.
So she's saying that how she eventually got out was her husband on many occasions together with other Pakistanis because the Uyghur women who have married Pakistani citizens are many in the thousands.
Yeah.
So they constantly went to the embassy in Beijing.
Yeah.
And so nothing would be done. And as soon as her husband and a few other Pakistani men threatened to go to the media, they got a call from Chinese authorities saying, "We'll take care of it. Don't worry. We'll personally buy you a ticket to go back to Urumqi, and your wife will be safe and sound." And it wasn't until her husband threatened the authorities by going to the media that is when they let her go.
Why couldn't they arrest her husband and put him in concentration camp?
Because he's a Pakistani citizen, no?
So he's a Pakistani. So if you're Pakistani,
he's Pakistani citizen. He's not Uyghur at all.
Okay, but if you're in China,
Yeah.
that basically means that these guys have literally no power over the media, and they're so scared of the media, and they're so scared of somebody going to the media that they just,
Yeah.
they'll give up people.
Yeah.
And that shows that
Türmeden çıkan vaqtimda biz özümüz tizimlatdık, özümüz xalagan bilan keldik degandek nurg'un narsaga imzo qo'ydirib yo'ldoshimni. Xitoycha narsalar deydi. Ayam buni qo'yibmiz, imzo qo'ysang bo'ldi deb ashad dedi. Imzo qo'yaverdi. Deb ashad bu tigi imzo nim deyman sizni miyaga qo'yib qo'yib, "Mana imzo qo'y. Men hozir qo'yibmiz" desa, siz o'ylab baqing, "Nima los imzo qo'ymayman" deb ashad dedi. Qarasam, endi keyin anglashlar qaraganda mendan keyingi chiqqanlarmi ancha-muncha xitoycha xatni o'qiy oladi degandek, u anglashlar qaraganda uningda yozilishicha o'zimiz ixtiyorligimiz bilan talab qilib o'qidik. O'zimiz kirdik. Hech qanday bizni zo'rlik qilmadi degandek narsalarga imzo qo'ydirdik ekan.
So just before her husband, she was about to go back to her husband, they made the husband sign some documents in Chinese. And those documents apparently read that Miss Zumurat herself voluntarily went to this place and that everything was done. So basically saying that we are at no fault and that this was a very nice experience for all. Something along these lines was signed upon, and this was a condition for her release.
Yeah. So, one thing which I've definitely taken away, Arsalan, and I think you've been saying this all along, is that they are hurt by social media. They're hurt by this. I'm not going to mention what happened before we did this live. We can talk about that when the sister leaves, perhaps, because we don't want to put her off. But that shocked me, right? And that's something which we're going to speak about. So I'd like to, if it's okay with her, to ask, if she just wants to give a last message before I take her off online, and I want you to have a little chat with you afterwards. So if there's any last message you'd like to give to everybody.
Okay, so after this, we'll have our own chat, right? You still want to keep her on after?
No,
okay.
As in, because I had her for like 2 hours, I don't want to just overburden her. So I just end it, and then me and you just chat a little bit about the social media side of things, because a lot of people are asking what they can do.
Right. Okay. So we're going to have her off, and then you and I continue the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But just ask if any last message.
Okay. Allah razı olsun da 2 saatga yaqin yem qildik. Inshaallah albatta.
Yani sözlesem tügmeydi. Gündelik bir günümle sözlesem 1 saat tügmeydi. Bir 2 saat tügmeydi. Her bir günümle sözlesem hem de hamma ishlar qisqartilib bo'ldi. Nurg'un narsalarni ko'tarib chiqaldim, nurg'un narsalar qilib qoldi. Hatto qo'limda bor isbotlarim Xudoyim bursa Xitoyning jazolanishga yetib oshidi. Bu apandimning tushiga payg'ambar alayhissalom sanasini tushib kirgandek, mening tushimga dadam xuddi har kuni bir necha qatim meni bak urib ketdi saqchilar, meni bak urib ketdi deganlar ashunda kirdi. Xudoyim buyursa, birinchi millatim, ikkinchi o'zimningki millatim uchun, o'zimning Uyg'ur millati uchun yoki mening dadam uchun bo'lsinmi, men bu yo'ldan hargiz yonmayman. Bundan keyin hech qachon men to'xtab qolmayman. Men bir qiz bo'ldim, lekin men dadamning yaxshi farzandi, dadamning boqqanini, topqanini, mening farzand burchini ado qilish uchun bo'lsin, dadam uchun bo'lsinmi, men bundan keyin ko'rishimni cho'qim to'xtatmayman.
So her last words are that she's obviously thankful that you've raised awareness, that you've helped raise awareness, that she's not going to stop. She said she could obviously talk about this all day and night, and you see that if we were to let her, she'd just go on for hours and hours and more. She's got so much information that she can still give, and that she will use all this information one day, to maybe at an international court of law or something, and that she will basically keep going for the sake of her father, and that as a daughter to do the duty as a daughter to her father, and keep going and not stop, basically.
Jazakallah khair, and please just ask her what's the name of her father.
Anga axirgi sizning dadangizning ismi so'radi.
Davud Abdurrahman.
Davud Abdurrahman.
Davud Abdurrahman. Davud Abdurrahman. May Allah make.
He's also a Haji as well.
MashaAllah. Dawood Abdurrahman. May Allah allow him to be a beacon of hope for the Uyghur Muslims or Muslims all across the world. May Allah enter him into the highest Jannah. Everybody who's watching online, make sure you do dua that Dawood Abdurrahman, did you say Abdurrahman?
Yes.
That Allah takes Dawood Abdurrahman as a shaheed and accepts him as a martyr and takes him to the highest Jannah and makes his daughter a means by which East Turkestan is free.
Amin. Anga xışı dua kıldı dadağınız için. Muşu inşallah şehit mertebesine, şehit makanını şu mertebeye çıkış için anandikin cennetül ala firdevs yani cennetten en yukarı katta kirgüsün dep dua kıldı ve sizin dadağınız sebeplik tüpeyliden siz muşaya çıkıp bir ilham yemizler muşu en ahırda siz mi muşu Şarkı Türkistan'ın mutlaqılığı ve şu erki halkının hürlük eriş için bir sebep, bir ilham olsun dep dua kıldı. Amin.
Oscar, I have two daughters. I have no son. Ask her, my next son, if I have a son, I will name the son, I promise her, Dawood Abdurrahman.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. Adeydo, benim kızım var deydo. Is this a promise?
This is a promise online. Live.
This is okay, tamam. Deydo, az sizge söz bermen deydo. Benim iki kızım var, oğlum yok deydo. Benim oğlum babasa, ben çokum subhanallah. Ben balamның oğlumның ismini Dawood Abdurrahman dep koyman deydo. Subhanallah.
So she needs to make dua I have a son.
Şununla siz benim oğlum bolsun dep siz bana dua kılışınız gerek dep talep.
İnşallah. İnşallah.
Subhanallah.
İnşallah.
Hada bulan adetteki insan emaslık bulanın nurgun ayra teşkilatı dep çoğun bir teşkilat var. Bular İngilizce'de ve dünyada nurgun çoğun işlerini kıyıtırı. Siz özünüz meyadın düşüp ben linklerini öğretime. Dünyada her xil her yansı projektleri var bular. Adetteki insanlar emasçı bular.
Hatta benim yoldaşım beni şunçalık kollaydı. Benim müşakkep Amerika kelgan vaqtimda bu çoqumşularni ovozi bulan anglab men sizlarga deb bilsam sizlar shunchalik beharam bo'ldinglar bu dinga nisbatan bo'linayotgan zid ishlarni. Mening yo'ldoshim hatto har qatim ashadaydi siz mushta intervyu beradigan yoki bir yer berib muxbir so'zlaydigan ishlar bo'lib qolsa bolalarga manbasiz qiling deb ashadaydi. Hattoki boshqa davlatlardami menga hozir nurg'un davlatlardan kelib mushundaq guvohlik berishlarimni degan vaqtida yo'ldoshim men xotirjam bo'ling. Bolalarga men qarayman. Siz mush Uyg'urlarning ishi uchun menging deb ashtaq deb meni shunchalik yaxshi qo'llaydi mening yo'ldoshim. Mening hozir shu Amerikaga kelgan yoqsi mening rasmiyat ishlarim bir taraf bo'lib bo'lamdi. Agar bir taraf bo'lgan bo'lsa, men balkim boshqa davlatlarga chiqib, mushundaq musulmonlarning diniy jamiyat, mushta diniy nimalar to'g'riliq nurg'un yerlarga berib, mushuni o'z og'zim bilan deb bergan batdi. Lekin hozir shu menda hozir rasmiyatim to'liq emas, shunga baramay ashtaq nim qo'ydim. Inshaalloh bu ishlarni yaxshi ketdi. Rasmiyatlarim to'liqla, mening bir sirtga chiqalaydigan bir ishlarim bular inshaalloh. Amerika hukumatiga rahmat, endi bizni shunchalik qo'llab-quvvatlab Uyg'urlarning ishlarini xili yaxshi o'z nimasida mengatdi. Mening ishlarim hal bo'lib qolsa, Xudoyim buyursa inshaalloh men bu to'xtab qolmay boshqa davlatlarga chiqib, boshqa musulmon davlatlarga chiqib shu ovozimni anglataman inshaalloh.
She's obviously quite emotional that what you just said, and she's saying that right now, like she thanks the American government and that her paperwork right now doesn't allow her to travel freely, but her intention is that once she does have the proper papers to go to these Muslim countries and to travel the world and to to talk about what's been happening in there, because she is someone we've actually got someone that lived through this horror and nightmare. So she's living proof of this.
She's welcome in London anytime she comes, inshallah.
Bula London'dan nim qildi. Londonda sizni har zaman qarshi olamizdaydi.
İnşallah.
So jazakallah khair to her. So Arsalan, what's the lessons? Just to tell her we're going to just wrap up so that she doesn't feel like we're talking over her, and then we'll just wrap up.
Biz endi men oxirgi so'zimni qilaman. Bu yerda sizni tashlayotgandagi his qilib qolmang. Men oxirgi so'zim qolgan, biz hozir yeb bitamiz. The lesson, I mean, it's 2 hours. I don't know how you want to do this, but the lessons are, well, first, let's be thankful for what we have. And I mentioned this to your show as well, that a lot of your followers are Muslims, and even the Muslims, their parents, I mean, I'll just talk straight to your followers now, that your parents come from a country that is going through some type of oppression, and that Allah has placed even you guys in a position for you to be living in the West, to be able to hear this information, because a lot of even other Muslim nations are oppressing their own people as well to an extent, and that you guys have a duty, that Allah has placed you in this situation to be able to raise awareness for Muslims like the Uyghurs and others. So everyone to do their bit, and don't take things for granted, like, making wudu and doing your salah, like even from just a Muslim point of view, yani, if you're not practicing Islam, look at these people, even if they want to, they can't. There's so much that you could take from this today.
Absolutely. And as you know, bro, I truly believe that if you look at a company or a government that has billions, right, it can only take a few million and put that in a budget to create anti-Islamic narrative, or the narrative that the CCP regime has, which is that of demonizing the Uyghurs and talking about this are vocational centers. Muslims collectively, a social influencer who say has 1,000 influencers who are listening, right? And they actually go out and tweet and do these things, that's worth millions. You'd have to pay people wages, right? You take an average person, right? And you'd have to pay them, what, 20 grand a year in the UK, the average salary. And you get 1,000 people. I mean, we're going into millions here, right? So the fact is that we have all these people at our disposal. As you've seen right at the beginning when I was praying Maghrib and you were like, bro, what's going on? Chinese government clearly doesn't like this. I mean, can I mention that now, or is that like what happened earlier, or should we not mention that? I mean, is that up to you?
Well, we'll mention it off camera.
Off camera, okay, off camera. But that is proof. That is proof. I mean, I put up this thing yesterday, and then that thing happened. So clearly they are interested in what we're talking about. Clearly they're very upset. I've actually had, and I've gone through my Twitter and also my YouTube, I've had people leaving very negative comments as if they're Muslims. And when I've tried to look into it, they basically just, I don't know what they are. They're just bots, or they're just people, with different types of names, and they're just writing these negative comments. And one comment was so childish. It was just literally the CCP line, and it was just paragraphs, like paragraph or 2 paragraphs of nonsense, right? So these guys are really, really getting hurt by what's happening. And, the work that you're doing at the moment, I've seen on your Twitter, you get a lot of heat, you get a lot of hate. So it's working. It's obviously working. And I really don't think, especially after this coronavirus and everything that China's done and the lives that it's cost, I don't think things can go back to status quo. I think there's going to be a reversal in East Turkestan, inshallah. And I think a lot of people don't recognize the power we have at our fingertips. They just don't realize that at all.
Okay, brother. Let's inshallah wrap it up, because it's gone for 2 hours.
Jazakallah khair, Arsalan. Jazakallah khair, sister Zumrat Dawood, right?
Dawood, yes.
Dawood Abdurrahman. May Allah bless all of you, and Jazakallah khair for watching this live stream. I didn't expect it. I mean, I've read and I've seen, but I did not expect the things that she's saying in the way that she actually said it. And as you can see, this is extremely hard for her. Look, this isn't just infotainment. This isn't just telling you guys, oh, wow, look at this, and isn't it terrible? Then we go back to our lives. We have to take action based upon what we heard today. And inshallah, we're going to continue. The social media campaign to raise awareness, and make sure that you share this video, and also visit Talk to East Turkestan and at Arsalan Hadayat on Twitter, the handle, and follow the work that's actually going on. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
Wa alaikum assalam.